Murphy, Councillor Haughey, Councillor Healy, Councillor Hopkins, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Kitt, Councillor Leddy, Councillor Maguire, Councillor McCamley, Councillor McDonough, Councillor Mulligan, Councillor Mulville, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Newman, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor O'Leary, Councillor Onumera, Councillor Quinlan, Councillor Quinn, Councillor Redwood, apologies, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Sheehan, Councillor Shovlin, Councillor Smith, Councillor Tormey, Councillor Troy, Councillor Walsh.
Okay, thank you. So all mobile phones should be on silent or switched off for the duration of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being webcast. All members, please remember to switch off your microphone when you finish speaking. All members are reminded that the chamber is a non-smoking vaping area. Standing orders will apply to all aspects of the meeting. Councillors are reminded of the provisions of Standing Order number 92 that all members are bound to act in accordance with the ethics framework and code of conduct for local authority members to cooperate with the orderly conduct of meetings, the direction of the Mayor and in a manner that is respectful of colleagues. Members have been circulated with the agenda for today's meeting. Any member forming the view that they have a conflict of interest in the matters of subject to today's agenda should now disclose same. Councillors are also reminded of the provision Standing Order number 93 that members must bear in mind that the discussions at council meetings are not privileged. No member may make false statements, impute improper motives, or use offensive or unbecoming words in reference to any member of the council, employee of the council, or any other person. Any member having made such statements or used such objectionable words and not explaining or retracting same or offering apologies for the use thereof when requested by the Mayor to do so shall be called upon by the Mayor to withdraw from the meeting. Members making such statements or comments may find themselves personally liable for them. Okay, before we go into the meeting proper, I just want to wish everyone a happy Christmas and wish all the staff a happy Christmas, and from the Chief Executive all the way down to everyone else who keeps this place going. Everyone's working hard, as you know. Like all the mayors before me, I've been out and about and all over the place, all over the county, and there's some great work going on out there, and I just want to acknowledge that without listing anything and wish everyone a happy Christmas and all the councillors a happy Christmas. And then I have an emergency motion, and I've had to rule it out of order, and it is out of order, so we can't take that motion. And we go on to the agenda, and the agenda we start with, wait a minute, confirmation and reaffirmation of the minutes of council meeting and budget meeting. So we've 1A, confirmation and reaffirmation of the minutes of the council meeting held on the 10th of November, proposed by Councillor Kieran Dennison, seconded by Councillor Mary McCamley. And we have 1B, confirmation and reaffirmation of the minutes of the annual budget meeting held on Tuesday the 18th of November, proposed by Councillor Breen McDonough, seconded by Councillor Owen O'Brien. And then we go into number 2, nominations, and the first one is 2A, members to positions of Innovate Fingal, and I'll go to John Quinlivan on that.
Thanks, Mayor. Members, you'll remember a previous discussion in the Chamber here about positions on the board of Innovate Fingal, the company that operates the 3 enterprise centres. It was suggested to us, and we're back tonight to pursue that nomination now. There are 2 boards, two seats on the board of Innovate Fingal for the elected members. One of them is reserved to the chair of the Economic SPC, and the discussion on the last night that this came up was around having a second elected member nominated from full council to that board. It is a full board membership, it's a directorship, so it is a responsible position and subject to all of the fiduciary duties and company law. So that's the first nomination before you. The second is a set of nominations then as part of the reorganisation of the companies, members had suggested that local advisory committees would be set up to maintain the connection of the Innovate company to the local centres. That has been worked through, and there are 2 elected members from each of the 3 local electoral areas to be nominated to positions on these local advisory committees. These committees will advise the board and the company on matters that might be particular to the locality and maintain the connection to the community that is an essential part of what those centres do. So members, it's over to yourselves. The first nomination is 1 member from full council to sit on the board and take on a directorship of the company. And then the second set is 2 members each from each of the local electoral areas.
Okay, we go to item 1 first, the board membership. Councillor Tormey.
Thank you. Can I propose Councillor Tom O'Leary, please?
Seconded.
Noted. Any other nominations? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And now we go to the various committees. So where's the list? Which one?
The list is in the report. So the local advisory committees, so the Beat Centre in Balbriggan, 2 elected members from the Swords Balbriggan area.
Sorry, we have any nominations for Swords Balbriggan area for this committee? And if this is not, sorry, right, if we haven't made our mind up, we can defer this, but see, can we do it if we can? Councillor Murphy? Where? Sorry, Councillor Tony Murphy, yes. And Councillor Grania Maguire, sorry. Proposed Councillor Tony Murphy. I'll second that. Okay, that's 1. We need another one. Maybe Swords or anyone in the Swords area, or we'll defer if we haven't any takers at the minute. We can defer that and agree Councillor Tony Murphy in the first instance. Is that okay?
Was Darren
Kelly. Seconded. Darren Kelly seconded. Okay, right. Are those both agreed individually? So it's like a vote, you know. So we agree to Councillor Tony Murphy and we agree to Councillor Darren Kelly. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So that's that committee done. On to base 2, which is Dublin 15 area. Councillor Emer Carboni Mangan. Sorry, Emer.
Proposed Councillor Kitt, please.
So Councillor Kitt proposed by Owen O'Brien, Councillor Emer Carboni, sorry, the other way around, Emer Carboni Mangan, and seconded by Councillor Owen O'Brien. Sorry. So that's agreed, yes? Agreed? Agreed, I presume. So now we need one more. Where are we? Sorry, Councillor Angela Donnelly.
I'd like to propose Councillor Breda Hannafy.
Seconded by Councillor Mary McCamley. Is that agreed? Agreed, thank you. And then we're on to number 3, which is Holt Malahide area. Any takers for Holt Malahide? Any proposals? We will defer if you're not sure. It looks like no. Okay, agreed. Agreed. So that's Councillor Breen McDonough. We have 1. And then. Huh? You've been press ganged. So next, one more. So we need one more nomination. One more nomination. Councillor Jimmy McGeeran.
I propose Councillor Tormey.
Okay, she's not accepting, so. Okay. Where we got who, Councillor? Oh, yeah. She was here earlier, yeah. Later, anyway. Come on. We'll move on to the next item and come back. Well, hold on. Yes? And seconded by Councillor Haughey. So Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Haughey, agreed? Agreed. Great. Well done. Okay, so we go on to the next, what's the next item? Where are we? 2B, is it? Yeah. Appointment of one member to the Dublin-Belfast Economic Corridor. John, do you want to speak to that?
Just to remind members, we had a discussion on this at the OPNF last month, I think it was. This was about the mayor was always an automatic member, and members agreed that we would change that now that we're no longer in the chair of DBEC, and that it would be an elected member nominated by full council. So one position to be filled from full council.
Okay, so Councillor Grania Maguire.
I propose Councillor Murphy.
And seconded by Owen O'Brien. No other speakers. So is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And then we go on to number C. 2C, appointment of one member to the Airport Regions Council. Do you want to speak to that, John, or whoever? Mary Egan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is nominations, as you say, for the appointment of a member to the Airport Regional Council, and this is due to the resignation of Councillor James Humphreys from the council.
Okay, so Councillor Jimmy Gearan.
I'd like to propose Councillor Cathal Boland.
Seconded by Councillor Tony Murphy. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We go on to, well done, that's great. So we go on to the questions. Questions 3 to 12, is it? 12. What am I doing with these? Agreed, is it? Proposed and second. Proposed by Councillor Kieran Dennison, seconded by Councillor John Walsh. And then we go on to number 13, report of the committee. So 13A, report of organisation procedures. Finance Committee OPNF meeting held on Monday the 10th of November. Proposed by Kieran Dennison, seconded by Dean Mulligan. And then number B, we have report of Balbriggan Rushlow Swords area meeting held on Thursday 13th of November, proposed by myself and seconded by Councillor Newman. Sorry, Tony. And then number C, we go on to report of Corporate Policy Group meeting. Is that okay? We all right with that? Corporate Policy Group meeting held on Monday the 17th of November, proposed by myself, seconded by Kieran Dennison. Report of the Blanchardstown, Mulhuddard, Castleknock, Ongar Services B Area Committee meeting held on Thursday 4th of December, proposed by Councillor J.K. Onamware, seconded by Councillor Walsh. Okay, fine. Yes? All agreed. Agreed. So, and now 14, financial matters, 14A, audit report. Oliver, yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. So there's just a number of items there for your noting this evening. So there's a copy of the audit report, the Chief Executive replies, a copy of the committee, Section 60 committee, the report from the Audit Committee, and the financial statements with the auditor's opinion included in them for your noting.
So is that noted? Councillor John Burchell.
Yeah, I was just looking at one section there relating to unsold apartments in Parnell Estate. The council owes 162 in Dublin 15 there, Parnell Estate, and at the end of last year, well actually if we could look at the paragraph, it doesn't make sense. It says, to regularise the situation, the council made the decision that all vacated apartments were to be allocated to social housing under an approved housing body caretaker agreement. The units were not tenanted with new council nominees, and management subsequently took back control of the vacant units, currently standing at 43 apartments. These apartments remain unoccupied. So I'm just wondering what the status of those 162 apartments are now. How many are unoccupied, you know, in the teeth of a housing crisis with a tsunami of notices of termination. I have a family with a court order to vacate their apartment in December the 20th, 5 days before Christmas. So, you know, I truly hope these apartments still aren't empty. And why was the council effectively acting as a a private landlord with the other units? That's the question.
Okay, there's 2 questions there. Who will take that? Paul, Carol? Yeah.
So, Parnell Estate, it's a project that we're working on at the moment. We have recently commenced a pilot study to undertake a number of structural remediation works to units in our ownership. We have a number of vacant units in the complex which are being used to rehouse the tenants affected by those works. So we need to have a number of vacant units in that development to ensure that we can carry out the required works across the development. So this is an issue that has been raised in audit reports in the last couple of years, and we have a plan in place to rectify the situation, to bring all of the units back into social and cost rental use, and that's been worked through at the moment with our housing department and our architects department. As I say, we have a pilot scheme on site at the moment. The reality is that a number of the vacant units aren't suitable for accommodation at the moment, and those that are being used to accommodate temporarily those tenants who are affected by the building works.
Okay, I don't know if you've got your answers. I'm wondering, when will the process be finished, and when will all the units be used as homes?
So as I say, the pilot program is underway on one block of a number of blocks. We will work through that pilot program, see what issues arise when we open up the units and undertake opening up works and the remediation works, and a full program for the overall scheme then will follow on from that once we've ascertained the extent and scope of the works required and the costs involved in that.
Okay. Councillor Quinn, Councillor, I can't remember your name. Burchell.
It's Christmas. Yeah, so what's the breakdown of social housing and cost rental? Has that decision been made? Because obviously my preference would be social housing and the tenants themselves, because cost rental is still a very expensive option based as it is. It's somewhat less than market rents, but still significant portion of a family income. So has that decision been made?
No, that decision hasn't been made yet, so we will work through the works, and we will ascertain that split and apply for a designation of cost rental units, looking at that development plus the wider community, and what we try to do in mixed tenure developments is to achieve a mix of tenures across each development, and we'll adopt that sustainable communities approach in this case as well.
Okay, so is the audit report noted? And I presume you're going to bring this to the local area committee, as you move along. What you're talking about there, the work that's doing. You're going to bring a report to the area committee eventually about your intentions here, including cost rental or whatever it might be, at some stage in the future.
We can do that when we have, as I say, when we have the pilot scheme done. We'll have a much clearer picture of what the
Okay.
final long-term
Right.
plan is.
Okay, so is the audit report noted? Noted, thank you. Where am I now? We're on to proposed disposal of properties. So it's 15A, notice of proposed disposal of land at Skerries Community Centre, Thomas Hand Street, Skerries, County Dublin, to Gas Networks Ireland, PO Box 51, Gas Works Road, Cork. I'll propose that if someone will second it. Seconded by Councillor Quinn, yes? Yeah, Councillor Malachy Quinn. And then we have 15B, notice of proposed disposal of land at Clonard Court, Flemington, Balbriggan, County Dublin, Phoenix, Ireland, 3 Limited, Suite 311, Q House, Furs Road, Sandyford, Industrial Estate, Dublin 18. Anyone like to propose that? Or I'll propose it if someone will second. Seconded by Councillor Grania Maguire. 15C, notice of proposed lease of... Oh, sorry, James Humphreys. Councillor Humphreys.
Just to clarify my understanding, this is for a mast is it usual for disposal of property to for that type of infrastructure, and what criteria does the council go through when evaluating whether to proceed with the disposal of property to a company like this? Is there a criteria or checklist that you just go through?
Okay, I've no one else. Who's taking that? John Quinnivan.
Councillor Humphreys, the process is we frequently get approached with proposals around infrastructure that's required in the area. We assess the need and the consideration that's on offer. We bring it through the area committee structure then to notify the members of the proposal, agree at area committee level, and then it comes through to full council at that stage.
Okay, so is that agreed? 15B. Agreed? Sorry? We did it already, did we not? I did it. So it was proposed by me and seconded by Councillor Maguire. So, and then we're on to 15C, notice of proposed lease of land at Ballahiri Road, Swords, County Dublin to Swords Celtic Football Club, proposed by Councillor Corkery and seconded by Councillor Smith. We got the right name, yeah, Mark Smith. John Smith, I was close. Right, okay, so you have the two names. Grand, is that agreed? Agreed. And then number G, 15D, proposed disposal of fee simple interest in dwellings. There's a list there. I'll propose those if someone will second. Anybody second? Seconded by Councillor Joe Newman. Thank you. That agreed? Agreed, thank you. So declaration of roads, 16. So 16A, Concealy Woods, Chapel Road, Concealy, proposed by Councillor Evie Tormey, I think, and Councillor Haughey. So is that agreed? Agreed. And then we go on to 16B, St Marnock's Bay, Phase 1B, Dune C, Portmarnock, County Dublin, proposed by Councillor Haughey, seconded by Councillor Evie Tormey, seconded by Evie Tormey. And 16C, Clonross, Blanchardstown, Dublin 15, proposed by Mary McCamley, seconded by Councillor John Walsh. And then we're into, and is that agreed? Sorry, agreed? Yeah, agreed. And then we're into number 17, Draft Development Contributions Scheme, which is Brian Murray, I think, is taking that.
Gaherlic and members, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to present this tonight. So this is the Draft Development Contribution Scheme 2026 to 2030. So just to give you some context before we start, I'll bring you through the process from the draft scheme that we presented at the October meeting, the public submission process that we've just come through, and the subsequent amendments we're proposing tonight to you. It's a significant source of income to the Council to part fund our capital infrastructure. It's a key part of our funding column in the 3-year capital programme we present each October. It brings in over 40 to 50 million per annum. Effectively, it's contributions from developers that are levied as part of their planning permissions. So it's important just to understand the context of where it comes from and its value. So in terms of infrastructure, you're looking at significant transportation infrastructure, major roads like Ongar Barn Hill that's been recently delivered, funded from levies, the annual road refurbishment programmes by operations, active travel initiatives, all of which not covered by other funding sources such as grants. It also covers a wide class of infrastructure in terms of community, parks, open space, community library development. Examples of that is your SEQ public realm will be funded going forward, regional parks, the recreational hubs, and then smaller schemes such as Knoll Village Park. The scheme expires at the end of 25, so it's important that we bring a new scheme to get us through the next 5 years. So if we jump forward there, Sarah. So just to give you sort of the background and the legislative basis, As I said, we brought you through the draft scheme at the October meeting very briefly without in public display. The making of a scheme is quite specific. You have to follow the section 48 of the Act and the relative guidelines. The scheme, each time we present it to you at draft stage for going out in public display, we don't differ greatly from the previous scheme unless there are lessons learned or things that we've picked up from grants of permission, such as Board Planala or Commission, as it's known now, decisions. So just to put that in that context, the changes we made in the draft scheme were minimal. We've put it out on public display, which is the opportunity now to take back in that feedback in terms of what the public and the developers had to say. So we've taken on board those submissions. We thank those, if you go forward, Sarah, we thank those who've contributed to the process with 22 submissions. We had it out in national media on our portal, which is a very effective tool, and we have put the draft scheme out on display in our offices. So in terms of just understanding the process, forecasting is a massive part of this process every 5 years. Forecasting future development of the county in the next 5 years, our objectives in terms of delivering capital infrastructure, and then the rates that will yield the revenue to fund the continued development of the county. So there is a bit of forecasting. We got EY to carry out an exercise in terms of development pipeline analysis. I brought you through some of that at the briefings in the earlier meetings. And there's a strong forecast of development going forward in both residential and industrial commercial. So we do rely on that forecasting expertise to give us a strong basis to bring a scheme to you today. So in summary, before we move on, it is a county-wide scheme. It is designed for all who visit work and live in Fingal. So the infrastructure is for the benefit of everybody, and we can't underestimate the importance of this scheme to the council. So the key message for you tonight from me is we need to adopt a scheme, and we need to ensure that we have a scheme that is robust to withstand challenge to serve us well. So if we just go forward there, Sarah. So just to give you kind of a recap of the scheme, the existing scheme indexed at 2025 rates in the first column. We've proposed 2026 to be indexed with inflation. So it's a slight increase. We went through that at the previous meeting. So based on that development potential that EY have given us and the project costs, we reckon we can bring in a yield of 312 million. We've project costs, eligible project costs of 400 million. There's always a shortfall in terms of the funding from the levies that will fund the infrastructure, but we believe there's a reasonable balance. As part of the scheme, we provide exemptions and reductions or part exemptions from contributions. Every exemption or reduction does take from the top yield figure. The pipeline that we did get from EY was very much high-level forecast development. It didn't necessarily get into the level of detail. It's very hard, as you know, to forecast future development in any great detail in terms of different types of development, what type of facilities are different aspects. We did put in the new scheme an increased charge for retention permission, so we've doubled the charge for those to discourage unauthorised development. So if we just move forward. So the new scheme, we widened the classes, so we have to have classes of infrastructure. So we've widened the definition, particularly in class 3. We've also changed the percentage allocations. So in terms of, on the right hand side is the proposed scheme. So half of every euro that comes in a levy will be put into a pot effectively to fund transportation and active travel infrastructure. There's a wider definition in the scheme for each of those classes. You can see class 3, we've upped the percentage and we've widened the description. So we now include tourism, culture, library, economic development, regeneration, and biodiversity is also in there. So we've taken on board the changes over the 5 years. The submissions didn't get into that level of detail, so we take it to public. We're happy with those classes. I think they will serve us well going forward. So in terms of just bringing through the consultation process with 22 submissions, and then breaking those down into sort of we issued you with a CE report, as we're required to do as part of this process. So the CE report, which was circulated on Friday evening, I know it was late in the day, we got the 22 submissions back. Most of them come back pretty late on last Thursday week, so Friday morning we got stuck into them, but we apologise for the lateness on Friday. So as required under the Act, I'll bring a CE report with the submissions received, a summary of issues and the responses. So I'll bring you through some of those now. So we have proposed amendments, and they're the headings, so I'll bring you through those quickly one by one. So in terms of development area, significant number of submissions came in terms of what we were trying to do was give clarity to areas of parts of development that are not buildings. So in other words, where floor area wasn't just the right wording for us. So we've reviewed the wording that was put in the proposed scheme that went out in circulation, and we've proposed a change wording which gives greater clarity, which I think will deal with all the submissions raised. So we've removed the red text and we've inserted the new text in green. So I think there's greater clarity there. Moving forward then. We brought new rates in terms of the shortfall in open space provision. We had looked at the rates that other local authorities were charged, in particular South Dublin. So the draft scheme rates are on the top left, and on the top right, we're proposing to bring them back. We are recognising and acknowledging the rates are going up from what's in the current scheme, which is down below. So in effect, with Class 1 open space, we're going from 200,000 to 300,000 and 350 to 600 for Class 2. The contribution is broken down into two parts. It's the land cost that we incur acquiring land to replace that shortfall, and then our costs incurred in developing that. Those costs are subject to inflation, so we have increased them, but we think it's a reasonable approach. We've removed the contribution in lieu of place. This was a new contribution we brought in the scheme. We've taken on board some of the submissions made by the developers, and we've taken that off the table for now. In terms of airport infrastructure, we've updated the definition of areas of development, and we're proposing this exemption, which we feel is reasonable in terms of it's in line with a recent board decision in terms of airport operational infrastructure also. So car parking, we've looked at car parking. There were various submissions in relation to car parking. So we've kind of come up with a bit of a balance. So the text in red has been removed, and we've broken down between, Matt will probably get into this a little bit more detail later, but we've broken down residential, commercial, surface car parking. So we've made some changes in the new scheme. So we're proposing that we would have residential ancillary car parking in line with county development standards going into the new scheme, so there's better clarity there. We're proposing some reductions then in the levy in terms of car parking where it's in excess of the development plan standard. And then we're making clarity in terms of what will not be exempt as standalone underground, multi-storey or undercraft car parking. So I think we've brought greater clarity to the issue of car parking based on the submissions. In terms of, we got submission in terms of common circulation areas and multi-use developments, apartments, etc. So we feel that's a reasonable proposal, and we're recommending to include that in the new scheme going forward. We've also taken on board, which is kind of linked, the submissions were linked back to the area of development. So some of the industry, the Chamber of Commerce, and some of the related industrial, commercial submissions related to, for example, truck storage areas and things like that, which weren't, which we wanted to give clarity to. So and we've also given a reduction then for certain parts, and other parts are fully exempt. So if we go forward, so that's pretty much it on balance. So that's it. Okay, look.
Okay, so I've no one listed here to speak, but right, sorry, Councillor Helen Redwood.
Yeah, just a question really, if I understood you correctly in the presentation you just gave. I'm just wondering what the implications are for removing the contribution around play areas. You know, I'm just wondering what implication that has for funding the play areas.
Okay, we'll get an answer to that before I go on to.
It is. It was a new suggestion in the scheme we proposed. It was calculated in terms of monetary sums. It was a new provision was put in. It caused some confusion because we do fund similar play facilities ourselves. So we said we'd take it back in terms of confusion with the developers out there. We didn't want to. We didn't want to go against the submissions, so we said we'd take it back and review it. It would not be a significant part of the funding. It would be an additional contribution. So where a developer is putting in a development, they still have to pay class 3. So back again, they would still be paying 49% of their levy would be ring fenced for that infrastructure we provide. We looked to try to charge an extra contribution, but there was a fear that it would cause some confusion and affect the robustness of the scheme. So we felt we'd take it out for the moment and take it away for the next scheme.
Okay, so I have Councillor Healy indicating, before we go there, so I have two councillors, Councillor David Healy and Councillor Patrick Quinlivan, have sent in, I suppose, a list of motions. Quinlan. Well, it is similar. So what I propose to do, David Healy has his hands up here, and we're going to go to David. But if someone wants to move a motion, I want him to move the motion. So I'm going to go, and then planning will give an opinion on it, and then we'll do our business. So I'm going to go to David Healy, and if he'd like to move, well, David, you do what you want now. So, so David Healy.
Okay, Cormaga Vera, and thanks, Mr. Murray, for the presentation. And I think what we've got as a scheme has some very good elements in it, and in particular, we have provisions putting a higher rate on retention applications, which I think are very wise. I think that, you know, incentives to people to not disregard the planning system are a positive thing, and I think that's a feature which some other counties have noticed and may be taking up. And what we did this time, I think, was we tweaked them slightly. Most of the elements which I'm concerned about and going to propose amendments for are elements where we've pretty much just been on autopilot from the last scheme or the previous one, and I think that we should look at them for changing. So I have submitted 4 motions to amend the scheme. The first is to provide the same rate for residential and industrial and commercial development. And
proposing that?
I'm proposing that one, yeah.
Someone seconded by Councillor Breen McDonough. Okay, go ahead.
And I'm not sure, I haven't been able to establish exactly why we had different rates per square metre over the last couple of schemes. I do know that a number of other counties have the same rate: Kildare, Meath, Dunleary, Rathdown, so all comparable. Dublin City, in fact, has a higher rate for industrial and commercial than for residential. And I would think that given the housing challenges that we face throughout, certainly the Dublin area, you know, there's something to be argued for that. But I think at this stage, what we should do is put in the same rate for the industrial and the commercial. And I'm grateful for the response to that rate would be 120 euros 50 cents per square metre. The second is the exemptions for car parking. So the second motion is to remove those exemptions. I propose that.
We have to deal with the first motion.
You want to deal with them one by one? Okay,
yeah,
thanks, Chair.
I kind of like to do them all, but anyway, we deal with the first one. So no one else has their hand up. I'm going to go to who's responding to that? Planning, or who's responding to this motion? Planning?
Okay. We would be in favour of leaving the scheme as it is, based on the UI development potential for the county. We feel it's a reasonable balance. It's a matter for each local authority. South Dublin and Dublin City and ourselves are quite different in many ways in terms of the composition of our counties, but we feel the scheme has served us well over the last few years with the balance that's in it and with the development pipeline that's set out in the UI analysis. We feel the scheme is well balanced at present.
Okay, we're going to go to Jimmy Gearan, but can you clarify what the two rates are? 120 and what's the other one? Councillor Gearan.
Yeah, if you could just show the rates be amended from what to the 120.50, because, sorry. Oh, and see that.
Where does 120 fit into that?
So Cahirlock, perhaps I'll explain how that rate is calculated. So the yield of 312 million is based on the 2.6 million square metres over the 5 years in the EY report. And that was broken down into residential and industrial commercial, the two types of development. So basically applying the forecasted figure against each type to come up with the same result, a figure of €120.50. So if the development came in as proposed in the EY report in terms of residential and we applied 134, and in respect to the other development we applied 105, we should get 312. If you apply 120 to each form of development have the same rate, you will bring in the same yield. The development potential is slightly different between residential and non-residential.
Yes, I have a list of speakers here. So Councillor Brian McDonough.
Yeah, I actually think it's an excellent proposal. You know, perhaps we need to be looking at the precise piece of it, but we're looking at, and lots of people have argued for ways that we can incentivise housing construction, reduce the cost of the house, and look at that. And now here we've got an opportunity that we can reduce that cost per square metre. Now we will be transferring the burden onto industrial development, and there's no question that there's some consequences for that, but it would seem to me that the volume of industry and development in the country is high, and in terms of the commercial return on it, I think there's a huge opportunity there. People make comparisons between our costs and rental costs in Dublin City and our rental costs as well, but they rarely propose that we go to the rates model or the other models of other places as well. So this is a very good opportunity for us to reduce the cost of constructing houses, and it will have a knock-on effect on the industrial burden, and maybe there's other figures that would be put in or argued, but having the same one, given that there's precedents elsewhere, I think is a reasonable proposal by Councillor Healy. So I'll be supporting it in order to try and make it more cost effective for people to build houses.
So Councillor Jimmy Gearan.
I mean, I agree, and I think it's always very good to look at comparisons of what other local authorities are doing, but a lot of people will adopt a position that we do what we feel is right for Fingal. I think what we're looking at in reality is putting a 17% increase on the development levy in relation to commercial land, while we're doing a 10 or 12% decrease in the cost of residential development. And the people who are supporting this are also the same type political parties that will say that the developers don't pass on savings. I think it's a big amendment. I wouldn't be supporting it. I think sending out a message to commercial development that we're increasing your development levies by close on 17 to plus % is sending the wrong message to a sector that we're trying to invite to develop and build within Fingal. I think the proposed changes are very slight, yet they are providing us the funding that is necessary in order to deliver our capital programme. I'm afraid I can't support the motion. I think it's just sending a mixed message, and you know, we'll hear in a year's time, oh, it wasn't passed on to the house buyer. I agree, take into account what other local authorities do, but I think we should also do what we know works here. Thank you.
Councillor Tara Butler.
Yeah, no, I'd be curious first of all in terms of the potential yield. If will this will be up, will be down on money? The two things are a bit like apples and oranges. Just because one goes down, the other goes up. It depends on if there's more of one than more of the other. So just the potential loss or potential gain here in terms of yield for the infrastructure, community amenities, parks, etc. that we need. Yeah, a bit concerned on the industrial and commercial side of it as well. Not only do we need to provide houses for people, we need to provide jobs for them. Hopefully jobs in Fingal, so yeah, unlike myself, they don't have to trek in and out of the city every day. So yeah, I suppose would like to see where would that put us in terms of industrial and commercial versus neighbouring counties, neighbouring local authorities in terms of, I know we've a lot of areas in Fingal where we are working very hard to try and attract businesses to set up. So, you know, for example, people in Balbriggan can get jobs in Balbriggan that they don't have to travel into the city centre, and similarly with our hubs in West Dublin. So I just want to hear would that put our business hubs then at where we're hoping to develop at a disadvantage compared to other counties in terms of kind of winning the big business that I suppose down the line will not only provide us jobs but provide us rates to help us do everything else we need to do. Thank you.
Councillor Kieran Dennison.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, just following on from Councillor Butler, just to see what the comparison is now with the other Dublin local authorities, and even for example, Meath or Kildare, because we don't want any significant difference between ourselves and our neighbouring counties. And it is, as Councillor Gearan says, it's a substantial change. And so I'm just wondering what the implications are from the executive in terms of making that change now, all at once. Thanks.
Councillor Tony Murphy.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to support Councillor Gearan and what he's suggesting here. I would have concerns with regard to the competitive nature of Fingal in close proximity to Dublin. I think we already have competition within the space for business, and we need to make sure that we don't interfere with that. The economic growth in Fingal is of paramount importance. And as Councillor Butler says, looking at the north of the county, where we just have a framework on Stevenstown now to try and create a greater opportunity for inward investment in that area is critical to the growth of the area. I also think that it would be naive to think, judging on what has happened before, that any discounting that has been given to developers doesn't necessarily translate into the end user. So we might be mindful of that. This may not be, and I understand where Councillor McDonagh is going with this, but I also feel that it may not be the correct mechanism in order to deliver the sentiment of what you're trying to achieve on this. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the speakers I have for myself. I would just be a little bit concerned that the income from the levies would be more predictable from housing, and hopefully we're going to build more, that our income stream from the housing would come through. I'm not sure if the commercial development rate would yield as much over whatever number of years. The other thing is, I did a quick calculation there, if I'm doing it right, 125 metres squared, about a 3-bedroom semi at 105 is 13,000. And I think with this motion, maybe I'm wrong or right, it's about 11,000, 2,000 in difference. That's what we're talking about, I think. Anyway, go back to management, see what they say. Brian Murray.
Okay, look, we are proposing that in the scheme that we kept differential. We've looked at the benchmarking against our neighbouring authorities and all of the arguments for and against the changes. So the change we proposed to you was only to bring the existing rate and the existing differential back to you, index linked with inflation by 1.5%, because we feel the current scheme has served us well. we didn't get submissions in terms of equalising. Just one submission came in terms of that, which is Councillor Healy. So I go back to what I said again about forecast. This is forecasting future development. So if you tweak the numbers in terms of one form of development and then they don't realise, you are putting the revenue source in some form of volatility there that by bringing in this motion.
Okay, back to Councillor Healy, proposer of the motion.
Yeah, Cormac Vera. I think it's been a useful discussion, and I think the question is really, the question of whether we want to encourage houses or jobs. And to be honest, my understanding of the world that we live in is that we are not short of jobs, but we are most definitely short of houses. And this is an issue not of, it's not the idea that this is necessarily going to be passed on. This is something which will affect the viability of projects, and that's been the line that we've been getting from the Department of Housing, for at least 5 years now, is that what we're looking at is viability. And if we're serious about that, and if the line that's coming from the Department of Housing is to be taken, and I'm willing to give it credibility, it makes sense to me that we would raise the same amount of money by shifting it slightly and by making housing slightly more viable, because that's where the crisis is. And people are suggesting we do whatever is needed. We had a development contribution waiver scheme for the last couple of years in order to facilitate housing. That is credited as having been successful. So the message from that is that the development contributions do have an impact on viability, and that's the basis upon which I'm proposing the motion. Thank you.
So is the motion agreed? So I think it's going to a vote. I think I heard no. So vote, please. Sorry. Sir, did you say 3 minutes? 3 minutes called. Thank you. Go to the formal vote.
Members, I suppose what you have in front of you is the draft development contribution scheme that was subject to a very in-depth analysis, and the recommended rates of levy were proposed to you and went out on public consultation. If you look at the scheme itself, you'll see what we spend the money on. What we proposed to spend the money on mostly are services for the residents of Fingal, community centres, libraries, and the rest, parks, of course. So I think what's presented to you is our rates that we hope to realise during the term of the scheme to deliver the projects that are itemised. It's not sensible to suggest different rates that have not been analysed and which have not been projected in terms of the future likely income. The purpose of having an economic analysis associated with the draft scheme is to make sure that we understand the likely implications of what we propose to you and what went out on public consultation. So again, I'd recommend that you adopt the scheme as amended and as proposed to you during the presentation.
Okay, we'll go to vote now. We get the vote going. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Healy, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's worth mentioning that we haven't been given any clear justification for the distinction that we are making between the two types of development, and that's something I've been asking for over a month, and you've seen the correspondence in relation to that. I'm still not clear in relation to it. We do have an estimate that these changes will bring in the same revenue, and that's from the start what I was aiming at, to come up with a net revenue neutral change. But I think if we're serious about the housing crisis, then if we have no justification for charging a higher rate for housing than for industrial and commercial, then I think we need to make the change and follow the example of a number of neighbouring counties which are using the same rate. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Now we're going to the vote. So can we get the vote organised, please? So green obviously is for the motion and red is against the motion. Okay. Is it working? All right.
The results of the vote are green, yes, 16, yellow, abstain, 1, red, no, 18.
Okay, so the motion is defeated. So we go on to Councillor Healy. I presume you want to move number 2? So proposed by Councillor Healy and seconded by, and someone read out that the scheme be amended to remove all exemptions for car parking. That's the motion before you. Does somebody want to second that or not? Councillor Humphreys. So Councillor Healy.
Yeah, Cormac Vera. We have taken quite a journey in relation to the way we handle car parking in our planning system over the last couple of decades. And we've come from a situation where the development plan required the provision of car parking at minimum levels in all new developments to a situation where the development plan now imposes maximum on car parking provision in Zone 1. And Zone 1 is pretty much all of the zoned urbanised kind of area of the county. And at some stage, you know, when we were requiring developers to provide car parking as part of the forward planning, as part of the planning conditions, and telling them they had to provide a certain amount, obviously at that stage it made sense that you would exempt the car parking that they were providing from the development levies. Now at a stage where we're limiting the amount of car parking that they can provide, and you know our approach is the other way around, it doesn't make sense that it would be exempted, and that if a developer is going to provide 9 square metres of bedroom or sitting room, they're charged with the levy, and if they're going to allocate that land to car parking, they're exempted, as if it was more important for us to have the accommodation for cars than it is for people. Thank you.
Okay, I've no other speakers. I'll go to management to respond to that. Councillor Butler. Sorry, someone else now as well. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, and apologies if I'm not understanding this correctly. You can explain it to me. Yeah, like I just, is the underlying aim here to have no car parking or have less car parking? I think we all know that if a big apartment block is going up next to our estate and there's no car parking, we think that's great. No one in this estate, no one in this new development or new block is going to own a car. Isn't that wonderful? They'll all get buses and they'll all get the trains. They won't. They'll park in our neighbouring estates and they'll park on the neighbouring roads. So, yeah, I'd like to see that explained to me. If this is to, you know, reduce the already reduced number of car parking spaces we're making available in new schemes, you know, that does nothing but push the car parking into neighbouring roads, neighbouring estates that are already clogged up. Thanks.
Councillor Jimmy Gearan.
Yeah, I see this as slightly anti, you know, car. We try to encourage people to provide ample. I mean, at one stage there was lots, but now we're down to sort of, I think it's 0.7 or something. I don't know the exact figure, but we try to encourage people to provide sufficient car parking. And usually these things, for instance, in apartment developments or that, they're put in underground and so on and so forth at huge expense to a development. And now to suggest that on top of that we put the development levy as well, I think would be counterproductive. I couldn't support this. I don't see the benefit other than we'll create confusion. We give developers excuses not to provide ample parking. They'll talk about it being too expensive and so forth. But the reality is we need to encourage and we need to make sure that there is incentive to provide the parking that's necessary for any development. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Brian McDonough.
Yeah, I don't see the impact of it being to reduce the car parking spaces, because that's generally decided as part of the planning process. As we all know, it's kind of mandated, and often people are complaining that there aren't enough car parking spaces, or in other cases that there are too many car parking spaces. However, like there is, if you think about it, one of the most direct cost implications of any part of a development for the council is actually if there's extra cars, because we provide roads, you know, and all of the safety measures that we're required to deal with cars. So there's a direct relationship card. So Councillor Healy's point, I think, is a very well-made one, which is essentially we're going to be charging more. We're going to be subsidising car parking spaces effectively, and there'll be people who choose not to drive cars who'll be paying it, or developments that are not car-centric that'll be paying it. So, you know, from this point of view, it is being charged there at a 50% of the residential rate. So, you know, as far as I can see, there is progress being looked for there. But I just want to make it clear, this isn't to take out the car parking spaces. It's just saying that we're going to treat the provision of a car parking space as being the same kind of cost implication as if you were providing a bedroom. And in the old days, you would have said, no, sure, a car parking space is a basic and people aren't living in it, you can't rent it out, all the rest of it. But actually, that's not the case anymore. So I think it's a reasonable assumption to make. Thanks.
Sir Joe Newman.
Mayor, just is there a danger that that cost will be passed on to the owners, the homeowners, and that?
Okay, that's all the speakers have. I'd just like to note, a few minutes ago we voted on a motion to reduce charges on residents and residential property, and this would effectively put up the cost of a residential property levy. I don't know how big a car space, someone mentioned 9 metres there, say it's 10 by 135 is €1,350 to charge extra on top of the current levies. That's what this proposal is doing. Councillor Colin Boland.
Thank you, Mayor. It would seem to me that the increase of the levy is appropriate to commercial car parking, whilst providing car parking for residential is, the argument has been made. But I certainly think that where the car parking is commercial and there's going to be an ongoing income to the developer or the owner of the commercial units, they should carry the same charge.
Okay, I think that's all the speakers have. I'll go back to management for a response.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just on the screen there, it outlines we have made significant changes just around car parking, what we propose to bring in the new scheme. So you can see there in the current scheme, ancillary surface and underground car parking is all exempt. We now propose that all commercial surface car parking, whether that's ancillary or non-ancillary, would be subject to the full commercial rate. So we believe that that's very much in line with the sentiment of the county development plan and a move towards active travel. You can also see their standalone commercial car parks would have been subject to a 50% reduction, so that has also been removed. They would be subject to the full commercial rate. We recognise that underground, multi-storey and undercroft is a preference to surface car parking, and there's significant costs associated with all three of that type of car parking. So we have exempted where those are proposed, and they're an integral part of the building. So if you think about an office building and where they have either a multi-storey attached or an underground, then that would be exempt. And that's just to try and incentivise that type of car parking over a surface car park that would sit beside it. And then just in relation to residential, so we're basically saying that ancillary car parking associated with any residential development would be exempt where it complies with the development plan standards. And then to try and de-incentivise anything above that, we would be charging 50% of the residential rate on a per square metre. But just in terms of Councillor Healy's proposal, yeah, we would have concerns that those costs then would just be added to the bottom line of construction of housing. So we couldn't support that.
Okay, Councillor John Burchett.
A quick question for the manager. Does this apply to new car parks only, or what about an existing car park that was free but now is proposed to be barriered and charged? What is the rate position on that? I'm specifically referring to Blanchardstown Town Centre. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Walsh. John Walsh.
Thanks, Mayor. I was looking at the slide there. Just the rationale. I'd just be interested in the rationale for. I mean, I obviously support the effort here to disincentivise car parking that's in excess of development plan standards by charging it at 50% of the residential rate. I'm just wondering why it's. I think that's been reduced to 50%, which is good, but why not have that at zero? Yeah, I got that wrong.
Okay. So we'll go back to management for the answer to Councillor Birchall's question.
Yeah, it would just be for a new development coming in.
Okay, back to Councillor Healy.
Cormac Vera, and I do appreciate the very significant changes that are being made in the proposed scheme as with the amendments. It's a big improvement on what we had in the last scheme. Like Councillor Walsh, I'm not clear why we wouldn't charge the full rate on car parking in excess of our standards. And it is surprising that we're seeing car parking in excess of our standards because, of course, the point of a maximum standard is you're not supposed to go above it. But the reality is we are seeing planning permissions coming from the board with in breach of our standard. I think the other changes, they're all going in the right direction. And I think this is something that the next time we come to it, we will probably get rid of this exemption. I asked for the calculations which would enable me to propose a revenue neutral change, and the planning department wasn't able to provide them. So that's why the motion was just for a simple change. So in the circumstances, Chair, I'm not going to push this to a vote and look forward to the next time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's withdrawn. That motion is withdrawn. So we're going, Councillor Healy, you want to move the next one? So this one is it up on screen there? I don't know. That the scheme be amended to exempt communal, social and cultural facilities associated with a housing development, proposed by Councillor Healy and seconded by John Walsh. Councillor Healy.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I suppose this is about our larger developments where we're asking developers, and certainly the community is asking developers, is to make sure that there is some communal space, social space, community space for their use. And in some significant instances that is happening, and we are providing, the developers are providing that space. We are requiring it through our planning conditions, and I think it really doesn't make sense that we would charge a levy on that space. And I'm very grateful for the agreement that we're not charging the levy on the communal areas, the bin and bicycle stores. If we're serious about multi-unit developments, then we need to be not putting barriers in the way of the elements of those developments which will make them a success. Thank you.
Okay, no speakers here. I'm going to go to management. So back to management for reply.
Thanks, Cahirlock and members. Our difficulty with this motion is primarily that we understand the sentiment. It's the definition of it. Every exemption that you provide in the scheme does affect the yield that's coming in, and obviously we're in the business of trying to provide infrastructure and get the balance right. So firstly, our difficulty is with the wording. Any exemption that we've put into the scheme, we've tried to clearly define. The other thing in terms of the motion as it's currently worded is, for example, it doesn't get into not-for-profit, so we'd have some concern in terms of those facilities. I would also just say in terms of multi-use, without digressing too much, we did suggest an improvement that Councillor Healy put forward in terms of common circulation areas in multi-use developments. So that exemption is clearly defined in the new scheme, and that's something that when the planning permission comes in, we can look at. So, for example, that one there is clearly defined solely for the use of residents in multi-use. So that's very easy when the planning application comes in to provide that exemption. So the one that's in the motion is, to me, the wording is not definitive enough and could leave us open to issues around applying that exemption. And certainly there isn't an element of not-for-profit, so maybe the wording as it currently stands wouldn't be suitable.
Okay. David Healy.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm happy to put in not-for-profit into the wording if that's going to solve it for us.
I think the councillor misunderstood. It's not that not-for-profit would assist. The issue is that communal, social and cultural facilities associated with the housing development is not defined and could introduce a weakness into the development contribution scheme. So it's back to the difficulty of designing the scheme here today when enough consideration hasn't been put into it.
Okay, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, I suppose there's two things in terms of, the design of the scheme. It would have been helpful if we had been involved in this process earlier as councillors who are the ultimate decision makers, rather than having it come to us at the last possible meeting before the scheme has to be adopted at the end of this month. The phrase communal, social and cultural facilities associated with housing development comes from the apartment guidelines published by the government. So the Department of Housing is completely confident in telling local authorities that we cannot require communal, social and cultural facilities associated with housing development as part of our planning decisions on apartment complexes. And that, of course, doesn't stop us from doing what we can to incentivise them. And I believe this is something we can do legitimately to incentivise them, even if we can't directly require them.
So, do you wish to put this to a vote? Okay, vote. Well, it's not agreed, is it? Not agreed. Is it agreed? No, it's not agreed. So vote. 3 minutes. Okay. We're reconvening the meeting. Thank you. Please get me louder. So we're going to a vote, aren't we? Yeah. So, right, vote. Can we commence the vote process, please? We're going to a vote. Everyone to resume their seat. John Walsh. This will be tight. 19. All right.
The result of the vote is green for 16, yellow abstain 0, against red 20.
Motion defeated. So, Councillor Healy, I don't know if you want to go on to the next one and read it out if you don't mind. Or I will.
The final one is that the scheme be amended to index link contributions from renewable energy developments of over 5 megawatts from a 2025 baseline.
Proposed by Councillor Healy and seconded by Councillor Brian McDonough.
And basically all of the other contributions are index linked and were in the last scheme and are proposed to be index linked in this scheme. So they go up in line with inflation. For some reason which nobody's been able to explain to me, the renewable energy developments are not index linked. And I suppose there was a time, maybe when renewable energy developments needed everything possible done to help them along in terms of viability. That isn't the case at the moment. And I think it's part of the development contributions that any commercial development should pay, and it does make sense that it would be index linked. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brian McDonough.
Yeah, I think this is a great motion. When renewable energy, in particular solar, were getting subsidies, and everyone was going, there were plenty of people who were objecting, saying, oh, it doesn't going to operate unless, oil is the only way forward, all of this kind of thing. This is an opportunity, now that the economics of renewable energy are so, particularly solar, are so well established, for us to actually start treating them like any other industrial development. And this isn't going to affect, it's actually going to treat them on an equal basis with similar developments and installations, and it's going to provide more money for the council and going to have no effect, because the advantage of power generation from these sources is so is so high, and it's very much going to be marginal in relation to the profit of those installations. So I think it's a good way of getting, and there are implications for this. So I think it's an excellent motion. I think it's one that we should all be able to support as very much a no-brainer, and as an example of, as things change, that we kind of evolve with it. I think the management should be very happy to see it come through.
Okay, I have no other speakers, so wait, Councillor Joe Newman.
Yeah, just I'm wondering if again that this could be passed on to the householder, not to re-offend with this the motion as such, But I do know the householders pay a PSO, public services obligation levy of, 15% for renewable energy, and there's a cost there. And I'm just wondering now, will this be another cost passed on somehow or another? I'm just not too clear, and I'd like an answer to that. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go back to management to reply.
Thanks, Catherlock. Historically, the rate has been left alone. It's been a matter for the members at each scheme. So I presume at the time, in various schemes gone by, the members felt at the time it was to incentivise renewable energy development. So we don't have a major difficulty. It's indexing it from 2025 rates, which €1,000 and 1.5%. It's a modest increase in many ways, and just in terms of dealing with Councillor Newman's, this is for larger capacity. This charge will only apply to larger capacity, so in the exemptions, just to make sure absolutely certainty, there is an exemption in there for the smaller renewable energy development with a capacity up to 0.5 million megawatts will be exempt. So it really is only for larger capacity developments. So yeah, it's a matter for the members. We have no difficulty with the motion, yeah.
Well, Councillor Jimmy Gearan.
But there is, just to be clear, it will potentially disincentivise development. Any increase does, and obviously it does bring in an extra yield in terms of infrastructure, so that's the balance.
I'm genuinely confused by a lot of these motions. I never thought, and I know I probably won't be, that in my lifetime, what's remaining of it, I'd have seen a proposal come from the Green Party disincentivising solar energy and renewable energy. I'm just surprised. I presume, as the manager said, we put it in to encourage. Now we're taking it out. Have we won the war in renewable energy? Have we no more need to worry? Not how I see the world. I would continue to give the incentives where possible.
Okay, that's all the speakers I have. I'll go back to the proposer of the motion, Councillor David Healy.
Yeah, Chair, I won't rise to debate. I'll ask the meeting to agree to the motion. Thanks.
Okay, so do we agree the motion or not? Is it agreed? Motion agreed. Thank you. Okay, so are there any other motions or speakers on this item? Okay. No. So can I have the documentation? So I have a motion here to read out. Formal motion to read out. Is that correct? Yes? Okay, so It is recommended that the draft Section 48 Development Contribution Scheme 2026-2030 as published, subject to the amendments proposed in the Chief Executive's report, be adopted by passing the following resolution. Resolution, having considered the draft scheme and the report of the Chief Executive with agreed amendments, the Council hereby resolves to make the Fingal County Council Section 48 Development Contribution Scheme 2026-2030 as amended and with the last amendment which we agreed. Is that correct? Is that okay? Yeah, so is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Where am I now? So we're on to number 18, which is Chief Executive's report on the National Planning Framework NPF implementation housing growth requirements guidelines. And I'll go to, I presume it's Matthew. Is it Matthew or Roisin?
Yeah, we've a short presentation, Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. I'm along this evening to talk about the Chief Executive's report that you received in relation to the MPF housing growth requirements. The MPF, as you know, was revised and published in April of this year, and this revised document outlines the need for additional housing across the country. It's estimated that an additional 50,000 homes per annum are needed each year until 2040. Following the publication of the revised MPF, the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage published Section 28 guidelines. These Section 28 guidelines deal with the revised housing targets and the housing growth numbers, and they set out on a county-by-county basis how the additional growth should be accommodated. So essentially the 50,000 units per annum is allocated across the 31 local authorities in the country. So for Fingal, you can see there on the table the national figure from 2025 to 2034 is just over 55,500, and for us it's 3,153. And then that figure drops at a national and a local level from 2035 to 2040 from 41,300 to 2,146 for Fingal, and the totals are up there as well. These guidelines also outline that we should be considering the application of 50% headroom to these targets, and that we review our county development plan with a view to including this revised growth. In line with these guidelines, the Chief Executive is required to prepare a report for yourselves, and this report is also forwarded to the Minister and to the OPR. And this report, as outlined in the guidelines, has to look at the settlement capacity of the current zoned lands, the means by which it is intended to cover any shortfall in housing targets, and a recommendation as to how we'll do that. So that's what I'm here to talk about this evening. In relation to where we are at the moment, the development plan was adopted and came into effect in 2023. At the time it was adopted, we had capacity for over 35,000 dwellings, which equates to just over 5,800 on an annualised basis. Our target at the time from the MPF was to deliver 16,400 units, and that's 2,738 on an annual basis. To date, we have delivered 6,770. That's in accordance with our quarterly return to the department, so that's at Q3 of this year. And in the pipeline, also at Q3 at the end of October of this year, we had over 4,000 dwellings under construction. We had delivered this year 2,580 houses, and we had just under 12,000 houses with live permission that had yet to start. For the purpose of this report, we have been required to carry out a settlement capacity audit where we have assessed the current zoned land and the deliverability of that. So we've been using GIS and other tools to assist in this assessment of the suitability of lands, the deliverability, and the residential potential of the lands. And this is linked to that quarterly report that we return. So in essence, what we've been doing, we've been looking at all the zoned undeveloped lands across the county, applying a density to see what's deliverable, what's not, are there any barriers for development, and to look at where we can release those lands or encourage those lands to come forward at a quicker rate than they're coming forward at the moment. And where that leaves us, so we had a capacity, we had a target of 2,738 homes per annum. We had capacity for 5,800. Our new annual target is 3,153. When we account for the headroom, that's an additional 50%. That allows us 4,730 homes to be delivered each year now until the end of the development plan. So that equates to 23,650 between 2025 and 2029. And in total, what we should be delivering for the development plan is 29,126. We have delivered, as I said earlier, 6,770. So between now and the end of the development plan, we have an obligation to deliver another 22,000 units. And then it's where we're at, what we have capacity to deliver. So in relation to our residential and our zoned lands that allow for residential development, we have 790 hectares that are not developed. 224 of these have permission. So that's 566 available, and 199 have been developed since the adoption of the development plan. So when we look at that 566 and apply appropriate densities, we have capacity to deliver 23,000 units. So that's what we have at the moment. The zoned lands we have that are undeveloped and available can deliver 23,000 units. When we look at the next stage in the settlement capacity audit, what is actually deliverable in the short to medium term? So what is going to come forward by the end of the development plan? One of the processes that we have considered is the residential zoned land tax. So I'm sure you're familiar with it, but lands are either in or out of that. So if land is out of scope for residential zoned land tax, the RZLT, then we have essentially said that they are not serviced and not available for development at the moment. So when we looked at our 2025 RZLT returns, we can see we have a significant amount of land that we have declared out of scope. That's the language of the RZLT. Lands are in scope and they're liable for the tax, or they're out of scope and they're not. So for us, we have already declared a certain amount of land that's not available for delivery of housing in the short term. So when we look at that, so lands not developed, no permission, not in the RZLT, that equates to 173 hectares. So when we look at that and take that out, it's reasonable to exclude these from the scope of lands that are available to deliver units for the duration of the rest of the development plan. So when we take that 173 hectares out, that leaves us with 393 hectares of land available for the delivery of housing. And that has a capacity to accommodate 17,723 houses. And against what we're required to deliver by the end of the development plan. So the last figure in the bottom right-hand corner is the shortfall. So we have a shortfall of 4,633 units. And now, as per these Section 28 guidelines, the onus is on us to come up with an approach to accommodate these additional units to ensure that they are delivered during the lifetime of this development plan. So our approach to address this anticipated shortfall in delivery is a proposed variation to the county development plan to accommodate this shortfall. We are continuing to progress our ongoing work streams, including the Dunsink Local Area Plan. Dunsink, as you know, is a significant land bank in South Fingal inside the M50, and there's been a lot of work going on in it over the last year to 18 months, looking at what can be accommodated there, looking at baseline information, and looking at a strategic framework for development. And we're progressing to publish a local area plan in the first quarter of next year. And we believe the early release of lands there can help accommodate some of this shortfall. We're also looking to identify suitable lands to zone for residential, which must contribute to compact growth. They're within an existing or proposed public transport corridor. They're serviced. They're in proximity to good social infrastructure, and there's no significant challenges or impediments to development. And this criteria is taken from the Development Plan Guidelines of 2022. And in doing this work and looking at and considering the lands that can be brought forward in the scope of this variation, bearing in mind we will be starting our development plan in another 18 months as well, we have discounted lands that are not suitable to zone for residential at this stage. For example, the high amenity zoned lands. It's not appropriate to put them forward for rezoning at this stage. They're the most sensitive parts of the county, and the omission of these would require more assessment and examination as to their suitability and possible replacement of other high amenity zoned lands. Likewise, to rezone employment generating zoned lands, such as GE, would require a more comprehensive and strategic review of the entirety of all employment zoned land, and that work will be undertaken as part of the development plan work. And equally, the rural cluster, to extend or propose new rural clusters, isn't likely to bring forward housing at a scale that's required for this variation process. Our recommendation, so in order to align with the objectives of the revised National Planning Framework and the Section 28 guidelines, these are the next steps that we're recommending. So to vary the Fingal Development Plan to provide for land sufficient for approximately 5,000 new homes with the following amendments. So it's to zone for approximately 2,500 residential homes on additional residential zoned land. It's to remove the long-term strategic reserve for Dunsink and provide that development in Dunsink will be in accordance with the forthcoming local area plan. And this will provide a plan-led approach and will facilitate the early release of approximately 2,500 units with minimal infrastructure requirements. We will also vary the county development plan to update Table 214, that is our core strategy table, and there will be, as a result, a series of other amendments to the text of the development plan to accommodate and deal with all the information contained in the Section 28 guidelines. And then lastly, it's to publish the Dunsink Local Area Plan in the first quarter of next year. So at the minute, in terms of getting a proposed variation ready to publish, we are carrying out environmental and flood risk assessment. There's statutory consultation that has to go on with the environmental authorities, and that's ongoing at the moment. Part of that is the consideration of our options and our alternatives, and then we intend to publish the variation, which is, as I said, amendments to the core strategy and the associated text, and the proposed zoning changes. The proposed variation to the county development plan, it's a 14-week timeline. There's 4 weeks on public display and 4 weeks for comments. It's 4 weeks to prepare a chief executive's report and get that to yourselves, and then within 6 weeks to consider that chief executive's report, where you as the members make the resolution to make the variation, refuse the variation, or make the variation with modifications. And any variation will have immediate effect once it is made. Thank you.
A few councillors going to ask questions. I'd just like to say that this report is for noting, and I presume management will go into next steps in a minute. Anyway, we'll go to the councillor. So, Councillor Helen Redwood.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you to Roisin for the report she's just given, and it's very, very good news that you know, there's a plan now for early release of 2,500 new units in Dunsink in this variation plan. But you know, really and truly, that's not before time. It's been raised time and time again on this council. This land was rezoned in 2022, you know, nearly 4 years ago. And in the meantime, the experience of councillors has been a developing catastrophe for families who are facing homelessness. And, you know, we've heard a number of times in the council meetings about how there's not even any homeless accommodation now. I'm sure the housing officers who have to deal with all this, you know, up to here with the CRMs they've been bombarded with. But, you know, obviously the major responsibility rests with the government, you know, with them being wedded to private landlords, wedded to private developers and so on. But, you know, whilst any steps forward that the council's been able to make or has been making is to be welcomed, obviously, I can't help feeling that there's a certain sort of complacency on the issue, that maybe the reports that we get have, you know, effectively create a sort of gloss on this increasing levels of homelessness. And, you know, why has it taken a new government directive to get this land released for development? You know, if it can be expedited now, you know, why couldn't it, the discussions that you mentioned, Roisin, have happened, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, and therefore the decision perhaps could have been made 18 months or 12 months ago, you know, on an urgent sort of basis rather than waiting for the government guidelines. So, you know, I'd welcome your comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Malachy Quinn.
Yeah, first, I'd like to welcome the presentation from Roisin and Matthew McAleese. I just have a couple of questions. You have a mention there of an additional 2,500 on zoned land. Will the density of prospective projects be compromised to get additional units into a large space or a small space for that matter? And I also want to welcome the realistic report that's just been presented today, because we can see, we've all been told in this chamber, we have a shortfall of 4,633, and it's up to us to be able to find that shortfall. And it says there's a land available for 17,723 houses, but we all in this chamber have a part to play in supporting yourselves. We have directive from government. A lot of us feel, and on me personally feel, it's a little bit too late, but we're at this stage now. So let's all push together in the right direction. And let's identify lands if we can. We have existing lands already here, sufficient for 17,723 houses. So let's work towards that. And let's be open to working towards that as well. Thank you.
Councillor David Healy.
And thanks very much, Ms. Burke, for the presentation. I think it's really helpful to have such clarity in the way that things are presented. Looking at the 173 hectares which are outside the scope of the zoned land tax, from your presentation and the report, there are two kind of main possibilities that have brought them outside the scope. The first is they're lacking access to some element of infrastructure, including water, wastewater, surface water drains, roads, footpaths and public lighting. And the second is that they're affected by contamination, significant archaeological remains or other physical conditions which would preclude development. Now, those two groups, as you know, as two bullet points there, are quite different. It looks like one is inherently the kind of thing you resolve and deal with when you're doing development, and the other is a lot more difficult. And it might be something which permanently precludes you from a development, or certainly makes it much more expensive than typical development. Now, the 173 hectares, using the rate that you've used for the other dwellings, would amount to 7,800 dwelling units. So well more than the 4,600 shortfall. So is there a way of telling us which of those 170, how many of those 173 hectares are simply lacking infrastructure, including water, wastewater, surface, water drains, roads, footpaths, and public lighting, and which have other physical conditions which would preclude development? And I suppose as you do that, I think this is the point at which it would be useful for us as well to see them on the map, to understand, okay, what are the areas that we've zoned which are just falling behind in infrastructure terms, and what are the areas that we've zoned which actually maybe have been miszoned because they're too difficult to develop, or so to get, and I know that's a spectrum, they're not two kind of absolute conditions. And then I suppose the next question is to understand the plans of this council as regards transport infrastructure and surface water drainage, and the plans of Ishgaren as regards sewage and water supply, and why, whether those sites have been exempted from zone land tax simply on the basis that the infrastructure is coming in a couple of years, or is the infrastructure many years away? Thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Joan Hopkins.
Thank you, and thanks for the report, Roisin. It feels like it was only a few days ago we were all in here doing the development plan. It's 2 years ago, and I probably wouldn't be able to count the amount of times we were told categorically we have enough land zoned. The problem is that we're not building on the land that's zoned, and so rezoning more land would not be the answer to our problems, that we just weren't getting on with the building. So I suppose I just want to make sure that the executive is satisfied that things have changed sufficiently, that is not the case anymore. So I suppose, were you, obviously you had, if you could just clarify, you had a meeting with the minister. Did he insist that this had to happen, or are we satisfied this should happen? And will we get some kind of infrastructure package, additional money to go along with the provision of homes? So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Siobhan Shovlin.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just a really quick question on the Dunsink local area plan. I know you've mentioned that it'll be, released or whatever in Q1 of 2026. Are we thinking that will be kind of January or closer to the end of Q1? Because I know there is a lot of interest to move this forward. And will it just be the local area plan will be sort of brought out for consultation? Is that what's going to happen? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor John Walsh.
Yeah, thanks to Roisin and to the planning team for the report. I think it's a very sensible and measured response to the crisis we're going through, and also to pressure from national government. And there's no question that housing is, the great challenge of our times, and like we're all dealing with absolutely heartbreaking and traumatic housing situations every day. And I know the housing department certainly are. I think there's a number of strongly positive features in this document, which I really like to welcome, and in particular Dunsink. I think it's really good news that we're bringing forward Dunsink for development, and it's also very good news that it's a local area plan, so it's infrastructure first development that ensures there will be decent services and community facilities for the people who'll be living there. So it'll be a high quality urban quarter. I think generally, I have a couple of quick questions maybe, but before I get onto those, I think generally in this process, we should be taking the opportunity to do community-led and plan-led development on public land, wherever that opportunity is available. Wherever the council owns land, we should be developing affordable housing on that land. I'm just wondering how much land in Dunsink is publicly owned. I don't know that, so it might be helpful for members to know that. So I think that's important. I do welcome that. I think the council is right to bring forward the Dunsink lands. And I think that's very positive. I would want to make a comment though on the overall context. Like, we're here because the minister has issued a directive that reflects the total failure of government housing policy. And like, the minister has effectively sought to drive a coach and four through our development plan. And he sought to make councils responsible for the failure of government housing policy. I mean, members were wondering why this wasn't done before. It's because we were operating off different housing figures in the development plan, which the government now says are wrong. Those housing figures are not only wrong, but the government couldn't meet them, and they couldn't even be open and honest about them in the general election. So the government's record on housing is absolutely disastrous, and it has no credibility. And I think we need to be very careful that we don't follow the minister's agenda, which is to put developer-led planning at the core of housing policy. This document doesn't do that. It's about community-led planning. That's why I welcome the sensible and measured approach that the council is pursuing. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Ted Leddy.
Thank you, Chair. A very interesting presentation. I suppose, look, one of the lessons for all of us is just because land is zoned for housing, it's no guarantee that there's going to be houses built on it. I mean, the phrase out of scope or unavailable and not developed was one constantly used by Roisin. So I am glad to see that there is a proposal to do a variation to zone more land. I'm not quite sure why the council is so committed, though, to not looking at anything in the high amenity GE or rural cluster. To me, the issue of availability is massive. I mean, is there somebody willing and able to build is the key question, the most important question, because if that isn't there, nothing's going to happen. So I'm not necessarily in favour of rezoning in those categories, but I wouldn't rule them out of kind of ideology either, because it may, like I know in my own part of the county, there's a lot of high amenity land that is located very close to infrastructure, and it may be appropriate, but I would not think it appropriate to close that door altogether. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Kieran Dennison.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Burke. I'm just looking at the lands that are zoned, not developed with planning permission, and then lands not developed with no permission, but within the scope, so to speak, in the residential tax zone. And I mean, obviously, our plan, or what we're going to do over the next few months, is predisposed on those lands being delivered in some way, or units being delivered in those lands. How certain are we that those lands with permissions that some of our councillors obviously would have been objecting to all along? How sure are we that some of those permissions will result in housing? And likewise with the lands that are within the residential zoning, but with no permissions, because I would have no issue with, swapping around lands that have not been developed, that are zoned, with new lands that might be zoned, that could deliver housing in the time frame we're talking about. Because I think we're going to have to look at the full scope here, because our aim is to deliver housing, not to deliver zoned land. And we have to take all these things into account. So I just wonder what your reflections on that might be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Evie Tormey.
Thank you, and I agree with the approach of prioritising Dunsink. I know it's certainly something that's always been mentioned on my time here in the council. I'm just wondering, in terms of Lisson Hall, it says lands at Lisson Hall are not suitable for development at present. These lands require improvements to surrounding transport infrastructure, including the progression of the Metrolink. Is it just Metrolink that we're waiting on? Like, are those lands ready to go, aside from the fact that there isn't a lot of public transport there? If it's not, I think we need to try and be moving to make those lands ready as well. Like, I know, look, there's issues with the metro and stuff, but hopefully they'll get resolved. And my understanding is that there's problems with the Lewis extension to Finglas, and I think that got pushed back. So, whereas that's kind of key there with Dunsink. So I'm just trying to figure out where we're at with Lisson Hall. Thank you.
Councillor J.K. Onawera.
Thanks, Mayor. and thanks to Roisin for that presentation. My question is not dissimilar to some of the questions that have been put forward already, but my concern is if the projection is 5,000 within the lifespan of the development plan 2023 to 2029, and we're already looking at a deficit of 4,600 thereabouts. How are we sure, given that housing delivery is based on supply and demand, how are we sure that we won't overshoot that 5,000 that's projected? Fair enough, we have Dunsink there to fall back on, and I think we were all very clear that Dunsink was a saving grace even as at 2023. Where else are we looking at making up the difference, the differential between what Dunsink is able to give and where we need to get the additional to make up the 5,000 deficit by 2029? So I suppose that's my question. Thanks.
Councillor James Humphreys.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Burke, for the presentation. And I just kind of start saying it's kind of unfortunate that so much resources and time has to be dedicated to something like this instead of cracking on with our actual development plan that had a list of priorities of local area plans to be delivered within the time frame of the plan. So I certainly hope that this additional plan foisted onto us by central government is certainly not going to delay that, especially the swords one. For 50 years, we've known what needs to be done in this state by development plan. It was 1973 when the Kenny report made the recommendation that the state should be buying up land plus a small premium that would stop speculation, that would keep the cost of land under control. And the new thing now of what we're seeing is land being flipped with plan permissions, which is another delay on an ever-growing list of delays that are facing our housing industry. Like, just for example, quickly, if you look at Moortown, was a housing development that houses are coming out of the ground, led by this executive that purchased the land and got the houses being built. So it is possible. Unfortunately, the government's solution to these issues seems to be that we just zone more land. Sure, Fingal already has enough land zoned to meet the criteria, but we'll add on an extra 50% and we'll just call it headroom, and sure, that will solve the problem. But we know it's not going to solve the problem. Study after study have shown that the land zone is not what is delaying houses being built. So I certainly hope that you could relay my fears that the work on our development plans, priority lists of local area plans is certainly continuing to work. And it is just a sad no for local democracy when housing development was meant to be bottom up, done through the development plan in consultation with communities. We've now done a complete 180 on that, and now it's top down. And that's not how we're meant to be planning our communities. They were meant to be planned on good planning, not so much on who owned the land.
Okay, Councillor Joe Newman.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm not going to repeat what some councillors have said about successive governments' failures to sort out the housing crisis, but I certainly do believe that our planners, including Ms. Burke, gave very good advice during our development plan. She explained all the legal aspects of what we were doing. They met the core strategy. The fact that we have more land developed was probably some of the land that we can't build on now for various reasons. I'm not too sure on that one, but I certainly do believe that they've done a very good job. The presentation today, the way forward, seems to be well organised, and I have a lot of confidence in that. When I hear councillors calling for development on high amenity, like our Taoiseach did there some time ago, I actually feel that we're losing the plot when we have to think about moving outside, out in the country, out where we have beautiful countryside, to build when we have enough land within the city's boundaries and places like that to grow. I certainly, again, agree with Kieran Dennis and his point there, and Councillor John Walsh. Greenbelt is, I sometimes see Greenbelt as land that's Greenbelt and we need to develop on it, and it's set aside there, And I think at times we probably maybe tend to ignore why it's put there in the first place, to keep, identity of different communities and that. So people that are calling to build on, HA and Greenbelt and create sprawl, it would certainly, in my estimation, be barking up the wrong tree. We certainly need parks, we need open space, we need biodiversity, we need woodlands and all that. So all of that has to be taken into account while we're going development, and let's not just go creating sprawl. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Brian McDonough.
Yeah, as Councillor Humphrey said, look, the pressure on, if rezoning land was the only thing that was required in order to have adequate housing delivery, we would have a surplus of houses. The fact is that we have been the victims of developer-driven planning in the past, and what this is an opportunity to create value by the state through rezoning. And value can be delivered on land without actually ever having to build on it, because once you rezone, it becomes an asset you can borrow against, you can use as collateral. Often objections to planning are when it's the result of the third or fourth entity that's owned it, and increasing intensification because of the price of the land that goes up. I think, if the government were serious about this, you'd have every bit that was going to be rezoned bought at current agricultural, or the option be given to the council or the state that every bit of this was going to be rezoned bought at current value plus 5 or 10% as a reasonable profit, because we've got to reduce that out. I'm concerned that it's just development, just for development. Am I correct? Is there any chance to rezone additional community infrastructure or other types of infrastructure, high amenity, to go along with this? Because if there isn't, again, what we're looking at is just thinking about the increase in the value. And the warning at the variation, it's going to come in, they're going to look at eating at green belts, they're going to look at developing in places that are, that are non-suitable. We have developers who come in looking for their land to be partially dezoned or threatened rezoning so that they can become exempt from the RZLT, but they don't want to completely rezone. So again, if the government was serious about this, some of the land that we would see that is not available for zoning, if it is not really suitable, we would see as it being dezoned, because if it's not suitable, it shouldn't be zoned or coming out of the headroom. Dunsink has its own challenges, but those challenges shouldn't stop us from trying to go ahead and develop this housing as quick as possible. But I'm concerned that it's not going to be a panacea. And if we're serious about it, as Councillor Humphreys and others have said, we need to be in control of the land in order to be able to absolutely ascertain that once it's accessed for development, it's developed or moved on to somebody else who will. Thanks.
Councillor Dean Mulligan. Thanks,
Mayor, and thanks, Roisin, for the very good presentation and the briefing last week as well. Yeah, I concur with Councillor McDonough behind me there. I really do think it's integral that the land we do zone, we utilise. We have seen, and one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue we have in this country in terms of delays to planning, it's not the judicial review process, as others will attest it is actually having land zoned and planning permission on it in some cases, and it not just being followed through on. Like last year, this year alone, there was 1,500 units not delivered across the country because of judicial review, where this year alone there's been tens of thousands, nearly hundreds of thousands of units not built because plannings haven't been acted upon. And yet when citizens make planning concerns to the departments, it's considered obstruction. When companies and multinational bodies do it, it's considered strategic, even though they make more. 70% of judicial reviews this year were taken by multinational companies in relation to planning in comparison to actual citizens. So we need to actually understand what is and isn't causing the issues we have. And it's easy just for other councils to scapegoat the opposition for actually looking for environmental standards to be considered and the infrastructure to be in place. That's why the courts agree with them. The reality is for us here though, we need to zone land, not just the Dunsink lands, but other lands if we are going to rezone it in serviceable sites. We have so many satellite estates around this county and around the country that can't be serviced, and we're putting people who desperately need homes in unserviceable sites in terms of actual urban connectivity, and we're going to be fighting that battle forevermore. So whilst we might have land that's owned by a developer who they want to develop, if it can't be developed and can't be ascertained for the infrastructure needed, we need to really reconsider that. So hopefully the other variations that come forward, apart from the Dunsink, which we're cognizant of, the other land banks we zone, are viable and achievable to actually be developed within the term of this project, or at least planning agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. It appears to be all the councillors. And on speaking on my behalf, I welcome the variation process. The variation process is as a result of the CSO figures of 2022 working their way through the various government plans, which is slow, I suppose, but they've landed here now, and it's not been foisted on us. We have to review our core strategy and align it with the 2022 CSO numbers. That's what all this is about. Anyway, you've heard me speaking before. I attended 3 openings for cost rental homes, one in Skerries, 14 homes, 1,500 applied, one in excellent, developed by this wonderful council, 80 homes in Mulhullard, 5,000 applied, and the last one I attended was in Northwood in Santry, and 8,000 applied for 255 homes. The government have a housing target for the next, I don't know, 2030, 300,000, that's 60,000 a year. They're on 30,000. The national plans, depending on which one you read, up until 2040, it's either 750,000 or 1 million homes we have to produce. And that figure of 1 million was confirmed by the Department of Geography one Saturday when I attended there on a spatial planning course. This council are developing lands. This council are developing our lands and developing lands they bought. They are the developer of mixed housing, private, affordable, starter homes, whatever you want to call it. They're doing it excellently. And I was there in the beginning when Matthew McAleese over there was devising the plan for Ballymastone. And we've been on a journey with that, and all that team over there and the chief executive have been on a team, and they've refined it, bought lands here in Swords. We're out in Mulhullard where we had the lands. So I would like to see them do more of that, because they're very good at it. They should be doing more of it, either acquiring more land, and I've said this before, and developing more like that. Council being the developer and get the land and move it on, and not excluding the private developer, but working with them and or let them off doing their own thing anyway. So I'm anxious that this would move on, because we have to get homes for everyone. Our phones are ringing with some terrible cases. There's no one exempt from that. The poor people out there that have to deal with this because they've no homes currently. We need to move this plan on and build more homes. So I'm going to go back now to management for replies to the various questions and statements that you made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members. Plenty of comments, and I'll try and deal with everything. I suppose just from the start, it's important to be clear. When we were in the process of making the current development plan, we had a housing target of 16,425 units to deliver during that time. And when I spoke, as I spoke often, of why it wasn't appropriate to rezone more land, it was because at that time we had a target of 16,000 and capacity for 35,000. At this stage, that target has changed. As the Mayor mentioned, the new figures take into account the CSO figures of 2022 and new ESRI figures for housing growth. So that narrative has changed somewhat, and that's where that shortfall comes into being. In terms of Dunsink, it's great to hear the support for it. Dunsink lands were first zoned in the current development plan, and again at that time, and this also applies to the Lisson Hall, we were working within that MPF target of 16,000 units, and at that time it wasn't appropriate to consider it other than for long-term strategic reserve. we now have the opportunity to bring that forward much quicker than we ever expected to. And we are putting a lot of resources and a lot of work into developing that local area plan so we can release it. We expect it to be published in early March. It should be published in advance of this variation being adopted, so there will be able to see the alignment of that local area plan with this variation. That's our intention at the moment. In terms of densities, the densities have all been estimated in line with the current compact growth guidelines, so in line with the current Section 28 guidelines around density, so we're quite confident at that. In relation to the RZLT, the language there in terms of not affected by contamination, significant archaeological remains or other physical conditions, that is the language of the Act around RZLT. We don't have any land affected by contamination. We may have small areas that were taken out as a result of archaeological conditions, and Councillor Healy, I might come back to you with the figures on that. I don't have them, but I just have repeated the language of the legislation around RZLT rather than anything that specifically applies to Fingal. All our ones, and the ones that we recommended to be removed or to be declared out of scope and went to the board, were really in relation to infrastructure around footpaths, public lights, roads, around water services, surface water and such. So it was more that physical, normal infrastructure rather than anything more dramatic than contamination, as an example. Dunsink, as I said, we would hope to publish early March, and there is council-owned land in Dunsink. I don't have the figure. I can get that to you, Councillor Walsh. There is over 160 hectares of land in Dunsink zoned for residential use, and then I think probably around 60 hectares of, pardon? Oh, at least half of it is in our ownership, and then we also have the landfill as well, which will obviously form a major part of the open space and a recreational hub in line, something similar to what's going on at Balili. So there is a lot of council-owned land in the area, and we're looking to bring forward that as part of this early release. The high amenity and the economic zoned land, I suppose the high amenity zoned land is our highest value, and I would be very reluctant to be recommending it for rezoning at this point without the ability to do enough consideration and assessment as I would like. I feel we will have the time to do that during the development plan process. This Section 28 guidelines were published at the end of July, and the language and the ask of us is that we rezone for houses and that we do this quickly. So we haven't been able to carry out, for example, a new study in relation to our economic zoned lands. We know they are developing consistently since the adoption of the development plan, but for us to recommend a rezoning from GE, for example, to residential, we would need confidence that we still retain enough GE zoned lands and that they are located in the right location. It would be our intention that baseline information looking at the GE zoned lands and the future economic growth of the county forms part of the development, and any conversation around that, and the same with the high amenity zoned lands, should take place at that point in that conversation when we have had more time to consider and carry out those assessments that are required for the development plan. As a few people have noticed or have noted, this was published in July, and the ask of us is to look at how we deliver more housing in the short term quickly, and this is our best foot forward. Our approach is looking at what we have now, what land we're saying is zoned and not developed, and where there's a shortfall, what's likely to come forward. The RZLT is updated each year, so we are working off the 2025 map. That map is available, so you can see quite clearly what zoned lands are out of scope of that, and that's something I can forward to the members following this meeting. In relation to land not developed and land coming forward, I suppose one of the things in this ask is that we do allow for that headroom. So headroom traditionally allows for flexibility. So you would always have, and in previous regional planning guidelines from way before the RSES, they always spoke around of a 50% headroom, where you would allow for that, to allow for flexibility and to allow that some lands will not come forward for development. So that has now been incorporated into these figures. But we're obviously working in our day-to-day work through our DM, through the LRD process, to ensure that lands coming forward for development are being granted permission in the right location, at the right time, at the right density, and with the right social and physical and community infrastructure with them. Like, it's always our intention, and I know you all know this from the development plan process, to be building communities. You know, it's fundamental for us that we're not just developing houses and rows and rows and reams of houses without that other social community infrastructure that brings about a community, and that's not something that's going to be lost through this variation. Lisson Hall, it remains part of our long-term strategic reserve due to the fact that the Metrolink is the main piece of infrastructure that's required for that. So again, it would be our intention to prepare a statutory plan for that and have that available to be coming on stream in 2029 when the next development plan comes into being. In terms of the Lewis extension at Finglish, yes, I'm aware of that delay, but obviously Ashtown and the Navan Road train stations are right beside the Dunsink lands and are actually closer to Dunsink than the Lewis extension where it terminates at. In terms of new zonings, the ask at this time is really the delivery of housing. So we are looking at proposing only residential zoned land. Now, we will be pushing forward, I would imagine, the RA zoning, and that RA zoning is a lot broader than the RS zoning, and the RA zoning, when you look at it in the development plan at uses that are permitted in principle, it's wider in terms it allows the small retail, it allows the community facilities, and it allows a wider scope of development within it. But we're really, the ask today, or the ask of the Section 28 guidelines, is the delivery of housing, and that's what our focus has been in this CE report and in the upcoming variation. I think that is everything.
Okay, Councillor Tommy.
Please, just to the members, can I just ask her to clarify? She just said about the plan for Lisson Hall is it to be ready by 2029, or is it for inclusion in the next development plan after that? Thank you. Sorry, the Lisson Hall lands at the minute have a long-term strategic reserve designation on them, and it would be hopefully our proposal to release them from that long-term strategic reserve. As part of a variation then to this, or are you looking for that in the next development plan? No, that would be in the next development plan.
Okay, Councillor Healy.
Just in relation to the land that's out of scope for the RZLT, and I appreciate that's very clear, it's all kind of in terms of infrastructure. How much of it is our infrastructure that we're expected to provide, and how much of it is Uisce Éireann's infrastructure? And have we got plans in relation to that infrastructure? Because otherwise what we're going to be doing is looking around to zone land where the infrastructure has already been put in place, which seems somewhat, unlikely, or certainly, quite limited, when it's our role and Uisce Éireann's role to put in infrastructure as required for the land that's been zoned already. Thanks.
Okay, I don't know if you can answer that question.
I wouldn't have a figure on the division of the lands. We'd have to go through each piece individually and see why it was ruled out of scope. It would be a mix. Definitely some of the road infrastructure, the onus would be on us, and that would form part of our capital works programme. But some of the water infrastructure is obviously Uisce Éireann. So I don't have it in that level of detail, I'm afraid, Councillor.
I have 3 more speakers, Evie, Tommy again, but we should. This is only for noting, and we need to go back to the management. They tell us what they're going to do next. And I have 4 more speakers. I don't open it up the whole room again, but we do the 4. Evie, Tommy, Councillor Tommy.
Yeah, no, it is. It's still on the same issue. I'm not trying to raise anything else. So am I correct in understanding the lands in Lisson Hall are actually ready to go? They are fully serviced. The only issue with, so there is work to be done on those lands. Because if it's just that we are waiting on the metro to be built, then I think we need to be looking at moving on those lands.
Okay, we're going to go to the three councillors and then we'll go back to management. Mary McCamley, Councillor Mary McCamley.
It's just a question actually for Mr. McAleese, I think more than Roisin. You know the lands beside Curra Finn, and they were contaminated at one stage, and we were waiting for that contamination to be fixed before we built the houses in phase 2. Am I right in saying that? And Roisin, you were saying we've no contaminated land, but I think that land was contaminated because of the cars that were being fixed there. You know, it's beside the M50.
Councillor John Walsh.
Yeah, thanks, Roisin, for that clarification on Dunsink. It's good to know that you know, roughly around half the land is in the council's ownership. I just had one question, and I did get a reply on this under the questions, but it's a slightly different question. Would you have a total number? I think you gave this in some of the briefings. Would you have a total number for the number of inactive planning permissions where final planning is given, where full planning permission is given, but homes have never been built?
Okay, Councillor John Smith.
I'll be brief because I'm conscious that I still find, I said this before, I think this is such a red herring and that it creates a complete illusion of what the delays are in planning and housing. Besides that, just around the consultation process, we've been contacted, I think every councillor has been contacted at this stage, requesting that consideration be made that the consultation process doesn't occur over the Christmas period, so that people have more time to be able to fully engage with it and that, and I wondered if that could be given consideration, whether that could be extended. It's not like we're talking about 2 weeks here, not blocking this from months down the line, if that could be considered. And Councillor Tormey has alluded to this around the issue with Metro. Like at this stage, I think I will be receiving my pension by the time Metro is being delivered, and we seriously need to start looking at different alternatives that would make a similar impact to the area. Lisson Hall is there, as you're saying, it's ready to be serviced. I've been trying to flick through the flooding report from 2022 here to see how much that would impact it. But yeah, I'm more concerned around the consultation period for this and if it could be extended to be a little bit later in the year. Thank you.
Okay, if we can get the answers to the questions, then hopefully we will note the report, and if the management can indicate next steps after that. Thank you.
I suppose in relation to Lisson Hall, it needs a local area plan. So it's, you know, that's the type of thing we'll be looking at dealing with and getting together and being ready for the adoption of the next development plan, which will align with Metrolink. Well, they're agriculture, there's nothing there. But that's not unusual for a large agricultural piece of land. So all that infrastructure would be required, but that's not unusual for a land bank of that size. It's 220 hectares and it's farmed at the minute. So there's, you know, the houses there are on septic tanks. But that's not to say that the infrastructure is going to hold it up, but the LAP will deal with that and outline how we get that in, how to phase that, and how to ensure it comes on stream at the right time. So there's a piece of work in doing the plan and bringing the infrastructure with it. I mean, it's not fair to call it unserviced because there's nothing there to be serviced. It's not as, you know, it's not as black and white as that. But we would work, you know, any application. Not at the moment. That requires a piece of work to work out how that would happen.
I think it's very clear. Can we move on, please? Thanks.
Councillor McCamley, I'm not sure. You might show me where that is on a map and I will check that and come back to you. Okay, yeah. And it's zoned. Oh, actually, I think I know it. All right, let me, yeah. The inactive sites, Councillor Walsh, we have 11,000, just under 12,000 live permissions, and around 8,000 of those are on 52 inactive sites. But I might just confirm that from our last quarterly report. I just can't pull it up at the minute. Councillor Smith, we're looking at the consultation periods at the minute, and we'll endeavour to facilitate people as much as possible. But I suppose just so everyone's aware, in a planning process, the clock stops between Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. So there's always 9 extra days added to it. So there's no loss of time by virtue of it being published before Christmas.
Okay, so is item 18, the Chief Executive's report, noted? It's noted. Noted. And do you want to say anything about next steps, or you'll email the councillors? Okay, thank you. So we go on to number 19, which is a draft annual service delivery plan, and that's for noting. Can I take it as noted? Is that okay? Noted, okay. Then we go on to the Chief Executive's report. I'll go to the Chief Executive, and then if you want to raise anything on the report. Chief Executive.
Thanks, Mayor, and good evening, members. I suppose firstly to join the Mayor in wishing everybody a happy Christmas, both councillors, management and staff. It has been a really successful year in terms of delivery, and that's from the work of the staff, but of course your support in having our projects delivered. That project delivery includes a spend of almost $500 million on site in the county, a lot of that being housing, but also delivering the 2 community centres, one at Baldoyle and one at Hartstown, Huntstown, completing the library in Skerries, the revamp of Baldoyle Library, some economic projects associated with transport infrastructure, the Barnhill Road, which will open up housing land and Snugborough Interchange, as well as many active travel routes in the county. In terms of housing, pleased to say that we'll deliver almost 800 social housing this year in the county, as well as completing sales for 500 affordable units. Our first cost rental scheme opened in addition to the activity of affordable housing bodies in the county, the Fingal County Council supported scheme, the 80 cost rental in Churchfields. Operationally, we've done, I think, a really good job in the county. That's evident in our towns and villages. Culminated, I suppose, in recent weeks with 44 Christmas trees erected. Many events and economic projects run in the county as well as supporting our tourism. So I think overall a good year. It's always good to reflect and to acknowledge the work of staff in rolling out those initiatives in the county. More to be done next year, a very ambitious capital programme to be delivered next year, including the completion of some significant projects, one at Key Street in Balbriggan, and of course the cultural quarter here in Swords, and I have to name it, of course, Culture House, which is really coming on when you see it under construction at the moment. So again, just to thank you for your support during the year, to acknowledge your work. I know you've worked hard. The role of councillor can be very onerous, and it's been evident by all of your commitment in the chamber and outside of the chamber over the year. So thank you all very much.
Okay, Councillor John Burchett.
Thanks, Chief Executive. I'm noting here that the council has introduced free parking across a number of the towns in the county in the run-up to the Christmas, in the recognition that enhances business in the area. I would say that is directly contradictory to what's been done in Blanchardstown Town Centre, where planning permission has been granted for the installation of parking charges and barriers for 5,500. Once, erstwhile free parking spots. This is an attack on workers, an attack on the shoppers, an attack on the users of the public facilities, the community facilities in the town centre. It's not a shopping centre alone, it's a town centre. Fingal County Council offices, library, Dreocht, credit union, bank, medical facilities are all going to be people's access to that is going to be commodified now. This was the subject of my emergency motion. I know the manager won't answer, but I want to raise the point anyway. Fingal granted planning permission.
Sorry.
One last.
We're precluded from discussing live planning applications or referring to them.
My last point is this. The applicant, SVP, Strategic Value Partners, own a car parking company.
Planning application.
They own a car parking company, APCOA, parking and clamping outfit. I'm presuming the council did not know. So this is a stitch-up. They bought Apcoa before they bought Blanchardstown Town Centre. So it's clearly a strategy to commodify Blanchardstown Town Centre, and Fingal have facilitated that. I believe it's a wrong decision, and after the statutory period is over, I think Fingal should reconsider. Okay? It's a dreadful decision.
I think you made your point, and I'm telling you, in this chamber, by law or regulation, we're not allowed to discuss live planning applications.
Well, I'll take my chances because it's a matter of...
I'm going to have to put your mic off, which I don't want to do. Right, right. Councillor Angela Donnelly.
I'm just looking for some clarification on the Fortlawn Part 8 planning consultation process. The website says that the closing day for submissions is January 5th, which I don't think that is the case. And just looking, could somebody clarify, please?
And Councillor Siobhan Shovlin.
Yeah, thanks. Just a few things. The LCDC funding that was announced last week, I have a few groups that are interested in applying for funding for various things. Have we any idea when that might be open for applications from Fingal's end of things? Also, the recently acquired lands at St Catherine's Park, I had somebody in touch asking about that they'd seen some work had started on the entrance walls to Beach Greenlands. I don't know would anyone at the top table have any further information on that. And also the Granard Bridge, following on from the public consultation. I know there's a piece in the Chief Executive's report about going for planning permission. Have we any idea when that might be? And also finally, the bus enhancement scheme. This is something that I raised at a local area meeting, and we weren't really exactly sure on that day about applying for a new bus stop for a new community there at Luttrellstown Gate. I see that we've spent maybe 300 of the 500,000 that we've been allocated for next year. How do I go about putting in a request for the Dublin 15 area for the remaining 200,000, or has that also been allocated? Thank you.
Councillor Paul Mulville.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the report. I just to join with the Chief Executive in welcoming in commending the Operations Department for the Christmas trees, and to congratulate all the local communities who have been organising the events around them. For example, Portran and Dunabate over the weekend, fantastic community events. Just to ask, in terms of the Portran Coastal Defence Works, I note in the report we're talking about a submission on Commission Planola in the coming weeks. Just seeking to get an update on that if possible. I think previously we'd been told by the end of December, and we're coming close to that now. Obviously, we're in December, so really there's a great anxiety from the community to see some progress on it and see the submission made on that coastal defence works scheme. So just to seek any update on it and press for progress on it. Thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor John Walsh.
Yeah, thanks to the Chief Executive for the report, and just a couple of comments. I mean, like Councillor Mulville, I just want to thank all of the staff from operations in particular and events who are involved in supporting Christmas events and the lighting of Christmas trees. I mean, and just to note the outstanding work of the community and tidy towns groups across Dublin 15 who work closely with the council on it, and Blanchardstown, Clonsilla, Castleknock, Ongar, and indeed elsewhere. Just like Councillor Donnelly, I have exactly the same question. I just want to confirm the closing date for the Part 8 consultation on Fortlawn. It does say the 5th of January, so I'm looking to confirm whether that's correct. And in relation to Granard Bridge, yeah, it's good that the non-statutory consultation there went ahead, finishing at the end of November. There is an urgency to that. There is an urgency to proceeding with the Granard Bridge project, because I think it is important. It's quite well acknowledged that it's important that it's done before Dart West. So yeah, just look to get a timeline on that. Not going to comment on a live planning application, but just to note, I do think there are fundamental problems with the proposals at the Blanchardstown Centre.
Okay, Councillor Joan Hopkins.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, just to say thank you so much to the events staff for all their funding and the operations for getting all the Christmas trees. We had fabulous events, and a big thanks to the Active Travel team for coming out and delivering Santa on a cargo bike for us yesterday. It was brilliant. I just wanted to ask about, unless this has already happened, if somebody could confirm if we're still on schedule to have the cycle route from Drumneye into Skylark and Portmarnock that was due to be open this month, if we're still on track for that. Thank you.
Mr. Dara Butler.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank everyone for the Christmas market who had here in Swords. It really was absolutely fantastic. It was great seeing the new part opened up for the grotto for Santa. I know he was a bit cold, but it was great. It was much more scenic for that type of thing, and it freed up the chapel for the other activities. I know that the first week the activity there was fantastic. I didn't get there this weekend when I know you had the autism group in there. So I know, yeah, listen, thanks a million for that. Yeah, as the Chief Executive said, it really is fantastic to see Culture House and that whole area going up before our eyes and developing. So I really look forward to more updates and more progress in that over the next year. And yeah, just to thank everyone for their hard work this year. And yeah, enjoy the break, and we go again in January. Thank you.
Councillor Mary McCamley.
It's how people are saying thank you. I'd just like to thank Fingal for the healthy Fingal schemes that they're running all over the county, especially for the older person. I was attending there recently, Blakestown Community Centre, where they had a launch of the WellX system, where older people go and do some exercises with a letter from the doctor to attend. But it's just wonderful to see. I was speaking to a lady who's 81 and who's doing the exercises there. And they also have walks around Fingal County Council, known Dublin 15. There are two, one in Mulhuddard and there's one in the Millennium Park. So and everything is free, and it's just an amazing scheme. And I just like to thank Fingal and the people who run Healthy Fingal, because it's a wonderful thing to attend. Thank you.
Great to hear that, Councillor McCamley. Councillor J.K. Onamwera.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to the Chief Executive for the report. Well, I suppose for me, given this our last full council meeting of the year, we don't seem to do enough of the thank you and show of gratitude, especially from here to there. So for me, I think there's a need for us to appreciate the operations staff, management, and everyone in Fingal County Council, especially on the other side, for the work you do to ensure that our advocacy, and representation on behalf of constituents and residents, are met. So thanks once more. Lastly, last year we were able to get a list of essential services, in the event, we need to reach out very quickly to people, on behalf of residents. Not really sure we have one this year. I think it would be helpful if we had a one-stop shop, list of emergency services in case people wanted to reach out to Fingal County Council for some of those essential services. I would like to see that happen. Thank you very much once again.
Okay, that's all the queries and questions and speakers. So we go back to the Chief Executive or whoever. Thank you.
Thanks, members. I think all your questions are very specific, so I'm going to hand over to the management team.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in relation to the works at Bleach Green, we might just circulate an email to all the Dublin 15 members, just giving you an update on that. There was, as part of the acquisition of the lands, contractually we had to put in some boundary fencing, so I'm assuming that those works there at the entrance are just those works underway, but we'll get more clarity and circulate an email around. Just on Grenard Bridge, again, look, it's at very early stage. We've just done the non-statutory consultation piece. We have a significant piece of work to do in 2026, but we will do everything possible to try and bring that planning submit that planning permission as quickly as possible. Councillor Mulville, just in relation to the Port Rand Coastal Defence Works, I was chatting to Mr. Halpenny this morning. Certainly it looks like we are continuing to meet all the deadlines, and we'd hope to have that application submitted this side of Christmas. And we hope there won't be any slippage, but look, if there is, we'll communicate with the local councillors and the local groups out there. And then just in relation to the Drimnagh Bridge, we'll certainly, as soon as that is available to be open to the public, we will open that. I understand it will be open this side of Christmas, and look forward to then an official opening in the new year.
In relation to Fort Lawn, the public display period runs until Wednesday the 10th of December, and the period for submissions and observations runs until the 5th of January. So normally the display period would run, and then the submissions period would be an additional 2 weeks because of the Christmas period and the additional days. That's why there's a lag there, so it's the 5th of January.
John Quinlivan.
Councillor Shovlin, the local enhancement programme, 269,000 in funding. The closing date has been set for us by the department, which is the 27th of February. So we've just got notification of it. We're preparing documents and stuff. We aim to publish it next week, before the end of next week, and then we'll do some webinars just to give people set it out for people and explain it and address questions in January.
Councillor Omnamura, with regards to contact details, you have the contact details for all the relevant people in your own particular area. With regards to over the Christmas period and after hours, it's the emergency number, and it's important to go to the emergency number because they have the list of the person who's on call. So there's a person on call every week in each area, and there's also a team on call. So go through the emergency number after hours, and residents should be encouraged to go that route as such, and they'll get in touch with whoever is on call for any essential service. With regards to the bus enhancement scheme, Councillor Shovlin, I think it was, yeah. With regards to a new bus stop, you need to go through the NTA for that. What we're doing is we're doing enhancement works, and we're putting in the shelter. I know you're looking at me there, but you need to get in touch with them. There's no point putting a shelter in unless they agree that a bus is going to stop there. Yeah, I know they did, but you need to get back to the NTA because they need to decide is a bus going to stop there or not. And if we're going to put in a bus stop, a lot of the bus stops and the shelters require us to purchase land, and we're not purchasing land. The NTA have to purchase the land. But once they've all that done, if they hand it to us, we will do the enhancement work and we'll put in the shelter and the seating. We have Dublin 15 area, 125,000 for 2025, and there was 5 bus stops being done. So we're just waiting for the approval of those, but I have literally got 12 months to spend the money. I don't have time to deal with purchasing land or that for the NTA. That's a matter for them. So they will get in touch with the traffic engineer, and the traffic engineer and themselves will meet outside and see if it is a suitable location for a bus stop. But once all that's done, once it comes to us, we'll do the works and we'll put in the shelter.
Okay, so that's Chief Executive's report noted. I'm going to move on. Mayor, everyone okay? Yeah, sorry, yes.
Thank you. Just quickly, Mary, in terms of the emergency number, and it's really good and it works really well, but if it's not a house that you're ringing about, they always ask for air codes, and it can be quite difficult. I just wonder, is there any like email alternative or follow-up email even? You know, like we could easily send a map, like say it was Unger and there was a fire, and you know, you're being asked for an air code, and it's very difficult to explain to somebody on the end of a phone where it is you're talking about.
Well, it is important that they have their air code, and it's very simple to get their air code. You just go into the air code and you put in the address, and it will give you the air code. We don't have, once they ring up, if they give the address, the emergency number, they'll probably be able to get the air code. But I don't know what you're asking me to do.
When it's outside a house, if it's a tree down,
Yeah.
and it's on a road, there's no air code. You know, there is no air code. It's to pinpoint an area that hasn't got an air code because it's not a residential house.
Okay, well, if it's generally outside a property, the air code, you should be able to easily enough get the air code. Well, we put it in, and it generally give an address on that road, and it'll give you an air code. You'll get an air code. Like, you can do it in 2 seconds. It's very easy.
Okay, so, right, so it's noted, Chief Executive report. Go on to 21, Mayor's business, there's none. Conference report, none. Correspondence, and these are for noting A, B, C, D and E for noting, noted. Departmental correspondence, don't think, have we got any? No? Do we? No? None. And then we're on to statutory motions. We're 10 minutes to go. If anyone wants their report accepted, please let us know up here. So we'll go into the first one. So it's Councillor Dara Butler. Accessible parking requirements proposed by Councillor Butler. Is he about? If he's not, we're going on to the next one. We'll come back to it. So number 26, Councillor Quinlan. Commercial business support scheme proposed by Councillor Quinlan. I'll second it for debate purposes.
I suppose the motion is worded and it's overarching in terms of exactly how it's worded. This motion is by way of the Fortlawn infill site. No secret that we're dealing with motorbikes and scramblers blown around Fortlawn and indeed the Greater Dublin 15 area. There was a development, or there was a facility up the back of Darmastown where lads could take their motorbikes in, and that shut down, and the reason it shut down was due to insurance reasons. So this is what this motion is kind of in the spirit of, to help those types of businesses that are redirecting. Like, I mean, face facts, like, living Fortlawn, you see this every day, like, it's still happening. It's not going to stop, no matter how much you want to try and police it, or just say, oh, they're ball jumpers, like, they're doing it. Like, my view on it would be to give them a proper alternative, like an actual facility for them to go to, a site for them to go to where they can engage in these types of activities, not putting any member of the public at risk, not putting themselves at risk. Obviously this thing is here a very, very long time, so for it to get to the floor now, and for me to not have it worded the way I'd effectively want to be worded is very disheartening, considering the spirit of the motion, and that's exactly what it's for. It's to give those lads who are in Dublin 15 going around on bikes somewhere to actually go to. So I would ask that the motion be passed, in lack of it being not 100% specific. I'm making it specific about what it's about. In the report and the reply, it says the cost of business insurance is influenced by a number of factors such as the size of the business, the type of cover required, the company's history and respective claims, and the type of business, with business in high risk sectors having higher liability risk and therefore a higher premium. And then it goes on to say that the council has no role in providing financial support to businesses or commercial entities in this space. However, it does provide business support and advice across a range of influencing factors. Set through many meetings over the course of the year. I've read over many minutes from other local electoral area committees and meetings, covering cost of insurance for like voluntary organisations and stuff like that does seem to be a recording factor. So I don't know if the report is just kind of like overlooking that, or is there further clarification needed on exactly what it is that I'm looking for here. But I would ask that the motion be passed, because I specifically wanted to target lads who are going around Dublin 15 area on motorbikes, putting themselves and the community at risk, and I'd like it to be passed with a view to get that site in Darmastown reactivated, to give them somewhere to actually go to. Thanks.
Okay, so Go to John Quinlivan for a reply.
Thanks, Mayor. Councillor, the motion is in respect of commercial businesses, so it's quite different to what you're now actually proposing from the floor. So I would not suggest that it's a good idea to propose it and proceed with this motion in its form. I'm happy to talk to you separately, but it's a very specific proposal you have, so it might be better at area committee if you wanted to go that route with it in terms of the specific site. But even at that, there are some arrangements in place for things like Tidy Towns groups and some community groups where we give a level of support, but this motion as it's framed is about supporting businesses, and that's not covered.
Okay, so Councillor, what do you want to do with the motion? Come back to you. I think.
Accept the report. Like, I have no choice.
Okay.
It is
All right.
overreaching. I know it's overreaching.
Okay.
Yeah, just unfortunate, really. Like, really is.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. Okay. The report is accepted, and I note the intention of the motion. All right. Okay. Right. Okay. So back to 25. Councillor Dara Butler. Accessible parking requirements proposed by Councillor Butler, seconded by Councillor Emer Carboni Magan.
Apologies, I didn't think we were going to get the motions. Yeah, no, I'm very happy with the report here. I think when I raised this as a question, I think at area committee and specifically around certain examples, I suppose the rules were always bought in with regards to, I know we have new rules and new guidelines, which are great. My problem was where we have existing estates and we look for something like this in an existing, whether it be a road lay-by or within an estate. I suppose the reply used to always be back to say that no, we have the new standards, and if we can't meet them, we can't meet them. So no, I'm really happy with this reply that we will look to, if we can accommodate. I fully accept once the space is there, it can be used for anyone. But yeah, no, it's great that the flexibility is there. That where we can't meet the new guidelines that would be in place for kind of a brand new site, that we will see what we can do depending on the conditions of the space that we have and what is required. So I'm very happy with the report. Thank you very much.
Okay, accepting the report.
Yes.
Thank you. So we go on to Councillor Gerard Sheehan. Homeless accommodation minimum standards proposed by Councillor Sheehan, seconded by Councillor, now I'm in trouble again, Ellen Trolley. Can we extend the meeting for a few minutes just to complete this motion, please? Thank you. Right. You're on.
Okay, yeah, the motion is fairly self-explanatory. Really, it is just about highlighting and focusing the Minister in relation to the issue of those in emergency accommodation, looking for very basic standards. There are houses, I'm sure we've all come across it, of those in emergency situations who don't get to use cooking facilities when they want, and the same with washing facilities. So I'd ask that the motion be passed, please.
Okay, I've no other speakers. Is the motion agreed? Agreed. Okay. So does anybody want to accept any of their motions? They have to be. 29 has to be proposed by Councillor. Reddy.
Seconded.
And seconded by Dean Mulligan. Number 29. I don't even know what it is. Where is it? Okay. Yeah. Grant. Okay, report accepted. And Councillor Hopkins, proposed by Councillor Hopkins. Which one?
42. 42, proposed.
Second.
And I'll accept the report.
42.
Thank you.
What are we doing? James. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, agreed. That's it too. You get them, you did.